Hey, everybody ready? Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Virginia City Council Chambers. We have a regularly scheduled Committee of the Whole meeting. I will call this meeting to order. Today's date is Tuesday, August 16th, 2022. And there'll be a little bit deviation from the agenda. There'll be one addition to the agenda item, and then we will ask our city attorney to just give a little reminder regarding disclosures and things of that nature regarding conflict of interest. We have a few calls regarding, those kind of things, and just a reminder. So we do have one addition on the agenda for the council. I apologize for not getting it to you, but he just came to the office about 20 minutes ago. It's Mr. Jack Norman. He wants to talk about what we're going to be discussing under other items of concern, item 9, which is the proposed ordinance of Chapter 10, Section 1038, regarding the sale of hemp-derived THC food and beverage in the city of Virginia. So as a professional courtesy, we'll give him 5 minutes to give us some information for consideration. And then I would ask our city attorney to just give us a little reminder. We did get some correspondence regarding some concerns regarding conflict of interest, and if you just go over that, just give us a brief synopsis of what our duties and responsibilities are with respect to this. Would you do that for us, Brian?
Sure, absolutely, Mayor. So I won't get too far into it. The conflict analysis can get a little bit long, but what I would like to just give a brief reminder on is kind of that direct conflict portion of that analysis. And so, put in most simple terms, if an item comes before the council and any council member has a direct financial stake or could be affected financially directly by that, they should disclose that, and then best practices, well, not best practice, the requirement, if there's a direct financial connection, is that you abstain from discussion and vote on that particular item. So just to get into it a little bit more, there's the direct financial aspect. So if the decision that's before the council, the decision to be made before the council, could impact you financially directly, or if you have a contract that's involved directly with that, or if the passage of a certain piece of legislation would affect your income directly, either positively or negatively, those all can create those direct conflicts. Also, in addition to the direct conflict, best practice is that we avoid what's called the appearance of conflict. And so if there's some fact or some relationship that you have that, while you may, as a council member, sit and think, well, I can set that aside and I can make the decision independently regardless of that relationship that I have. But if the public saw it, the public would think, there's got to be a conflict there. That's the appearance of conflict, and best practices that we try to avoid those as well. And so if you, as you think through the decisions that come before the council and the choices that you're asked to make and votes you're asked to make, if you think, well, when the public knew this fact, they would think for sure there's a conflict, you may also want to make that disclosure and just abstain from the vote as a best practice.
Thank you, Brian. Councilor Barabo?
Yeah, Mayor, let's get this off dead center on this. I know it's directed at me for comments I made.
No, it's
last
not.
time. Well, I don't care. I'm gonna do this anyway. I'm gonna disclose.
Okay,
I'm a
very good.
retired pharmacist
Okay, go
from
ahead.
Target Corporation with dealt with all kinds of controlled substances in the past. I have no monetary conflict except my retirement coming from Target. I do not work for them anymore, okay? I have my professional opinions on when it comes to controlled substances and this potential law that may go into effect. I have no monetary issue with this. Now, I'm going to make comments based on past history. Is that illegal to do? I'm not going to mention names. I'm not going to mention where I got this information. Is from professional things I did as an active pharmacist during the time that a lot of these controlled things are being done over time from my 40 years as a pharmacist. So I want an opinion on that because I'm not going to keep my mouth shut on this. I'm going to tell you that straight out. Okay. I've already told some people who have called me my position on this. So if that's a conflict, then I have a conflict and I'll deal with it myself.
Okay, first of all, if I may, Counselor Bearable, this request wasn't directly related to that. It's just a general comment about a variety of issues that will be coming for the council in the future, some ordinance changes, some other things that may have an effect or may present a conflict, and so that's why we asked our city attorney to just give us a quick overview of the process moving forward so that we're all aware if we're going to make decisions and we may or may not have an indirect or direct conflict that we would disclose that. That's the only reason that I asked him to do that. It had nothing to do with any directly related to you. But Brian, would you please answer Councilor Baraboo's question and comments with respect to
Can I
that?
just add one more thing, Mayor? My retirement is a fixed retirement. I get no add-ons or anything if something were to happen where there'd be a benefit to Target Corporation.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Baraboo. Brian?
Thanks, Mayor. And I can't issue a verbal opinion on this one. It's a simple one. There's no conflict there. The fact that you're a retired pharmacist doesn't preclude you or doesn't create a conflict. In fact, it may make you particularly knowledgeable about the items. Like you said, whether or not the ordinance, the moratorium passes, it doesn't appear that I have no knowledge that you receive any financial gain or loss. As you said, your retirement from Target Corporation is a fixed amount and would be unaffected by changes in the law. So there is no conflict there.
Did make comments at the last committee of the whole, or the actual council meeting.
Yeah, and once again, I want to reiterate that this has nothing to do with those comments. It's just a general perspective. As we make decisions moving forward, there are some issues that are becoming for the council that may warrant us to make a disclosure at one point or another. So thank you for that. And so thank you for the deviation from the regular agenda. So we'll move to the full agenda, starting with appearances number 1, and we'll turn the agenda over to our city administrator, Britt C. Bennis. Britt?
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is Matt Reed from SCH, our engineer of record, regarding evaluation of the traffic signals on Chestnut Street.
Good morning, Matt.
Morning. This is, as you may recall, this is a carryover item from a couple weeks ago. I don't know if there was any further correspondence with any of the business owners or anything. Maybe Britt can touch on that if she needs to, but just a quick recap, we're trying to come up with a decision on what we want to do with the 5 traffic signals on Chestnut Street, whether we want to replace all of them, replace some of them. And so I was at the meeting 2 weeks ago, I believe. I had just asked to get some feedback and maybe some direction from the council on what you would like to see. So Britt, have you had any other correspondence?
I did receive 2 written correspondences that I believe the council members do have on their desk. And it was listed in the paper, both Hometown Focus and Sabi Tribune, and it was also directly emailed to everybody I have that is known on the Revive Virginia mailing list. So,
And then the comments you did receive were requests for some deviation from the current system of traffic signals that are on all intersections. There's some suggestions to try to alleviate some of the traffic issues by replacing the new traffic signals with 4-way stops or 3-way stops, depending upon what each of these requests from the citizenry has indicated in their written correspondence. As we're looking through those written correspondence, and we're looking to maybe kind of make a decision where, from the elected body, moving forward to the next council meeting for final approval, what we'd like to see as far as the traffic signals. And I see as these councilors are continuing to look through their packets, I'll just make a comment for myself that I'm encouraged by the comments made by the general public and those that have come to me and probably other councilors. I would like to see the 2nd Avenue Chestnut Street traffic signal be completely rebuilt, not modified to last 3 to 5 years. To a long-term commitment for us to put a traffic signal system in there that's going to be for the long term and have the data-driven components in which to continue to operate in emergency mode or whatever the case needs to be. And then at 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, I see no problem with a 4-way stop at 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and a 3-way stop on 6th. And those comments that are my suggestions, in my opinion, based upon the individuals that I've spoken to in the public. So those are my comments. Thank you. Any other comments, questions, or concerns by the council as we consider this change that's being modified and presented to us by Matt Reed, our SCH engineering consultant? Counselor Bearable.
Mayor, thank you. I've had some comments from individuals on this. Second Avenue needs to be, I agree, Mayor, needs to be totally rebuilt to the standards that we have on Highway 53 and the rest, so we can have interruptions there for emergency vehicles, et cetera, on that particular one. Third Avenue, I don't think we need four-way stops. I think all we need is avenue stops, two-way stops to keep the traffic from backing up where people are parking and trying to get out from that diagonal parking. Fourth Street, we need lights because of the emergency vehicles that go through there. Our public safety building will not be built for probably another couple of years totally on that, so we need to have that so they can interrupt coming out of their emergency things, so they can go right through those lights with the push of a button. So I think they need that interrupt at that one. Fifth Avenue, two-way stop again. I don't think we need a four-way stop. And Sixth Avenue, the three-way is fine. I don't know if we need lights there. That's one I have a question mark on because it's a straight dead on. There's no traffic actually going through. It's either turning left or right there. So three-way stop may be okay without lights. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Bearable. Matt, I know you've laid out all these, I don't know, was there 60 pages of documents and very well. I tried to understand it over the weekend, reading it over on a number of occasions. And so as you explained it at the last committee of the whole meeting and today, I just look at what the concerns are from the public and what's the best way for the traffic flow to move forward. So the goal and the objective is not to bunch up traffic or to have stacking as a result of that. When you have a traffic light on Chestnut Street that's in the mode of red, there is a stacking issue there and people have difficulty getting out. So as people move through a four-way stop, it may or may not improve. It looks like it does based on the studies that were presented in your analysis moving forward. So that's why I look at the comments from the community and I try to make a decision based on what I think the majority of the comments are and based upon your proposals moving forward. So we do have to have some traffic signals in the emergency routes, which is particularly Second Avenue and whatever. So I'm looking for other comments from the elected body. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Sullivan, have you had an opportunity to look at this as the community development planner and what it looks like moving forward according to the master plan we did and that kind of stuff?
Yes.
Could you give your input on what you foresee today, or do you need some time to prepare?
No, I can give some input. I concur with Councilor Bearable. I think that's pretty much kind of what I was thinking too, but keep in mind, I grew up in this town and I'm really used to the stoplights and I'm a creature of habit, so I don't like huge changes, but if it had to be changed, I would concur with Councilor Bearable on that. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, John. And I guess for me, I would like to see four-way stops and not two-way stops just for consistency. I think Second Avenue should be redone completely for the same reasons, knowing that it's a busy street. And I appreciate the opportunity to make Virginia more accessible through this project too. That's the one thing I'm looking forward to, that whatever we do on the streets, the corners become more accessible, it becomes more walkable, it becomes safer for pedestrians, and that's really what we're working on doing for downtown, is making it better for pedestrians and people to be. So I question the feasibility of spending a lot of money on the 4th Avenue intersection to have the complete set of lights for 2 or 3 years, depending on however long it takes us to build the big building. I would wonder if there's the ability to put in like sometimes you see lights that are just for when the emergency vehicles are going. And now I would wonder if that's something we could put on 4th Avenue that would be less expensive than a full set of stoplights, but when they come out, when the doors open, whatever, they automatically start flashing or stop, and that intersection freezes up except for public safety. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. And I would be in agreement with the stop signs, but I just want people to remember when you're backing out of an angled spot without slowing some of that traffic down, I just don't want to see people getting rear-ended because if there's no stop sign to slow them. Backing out is very difficult from the angled spots. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Beyondich. So we're discussing this. We have a proposal from Matt Reeder, SEH, our engineer consultant. We've talked about this in the past. But we need to really move this forward, and we're going to discuss this, potentially make a decision, a consensus to move it to the council for final approval. And so this would be an opportunity I would like to think if there's anybody that's currently in the audience that'd like to comment on, you're welcome to come in and give us your perspective if you like. Okay, no one, so thank you. Matt.
One thing I would mention on the two-way stops, we're thinking about vehicles, and that's the first thing that comes to mind, but don't forget about the pedestrians too. So if you go to a two-way stop, it makes it more challenging for the pedestrians to cross Chestnut Street if that's a wide open intersection. So that quite frankly was the driver behind the four-way stop. Otherwise, I would totally agree. If there wasn't a lot of pedestrian traffic, it doesn't make a lot of sense to put stop signs on Chestnut going east-west. But for the purposes of pedestrians, it's something that I would at least think about and consider. So,
And I think those studies that I read through some of the other documents that show that the four-way stop are safer, more beneficial, keeps the traffic moving forward, doesn't stack up like a traffic light does over time, particularly in the congested areas on Chestnut Street where the comment was about being able to back up. Sometimes, they're waiting a long time, which do that. They have to wait for the light to turn before they can back out. Whereas when they have a four-way stop, there's time for vehicles to allow another one to come in and out of there. So I think the concept is good. I like the four-way stop system, except for the section of Second Avenue. So, and with Councilor Johnson's comments, and then of course Councilor Baraboo about the emergency vehicles coming from the old fire hall. They're continuing to operate in emergency mode, and they would continue to do so until the new one came into effect. So to put a brand new set of stoplights there doesn't make any sense. Some kind of an emergency beacon, a flashing beacon that they can, whatever the case may be. But even leaving it the way it is, they've been able to operate according to the fire personnel that I spoke to, that wouldn't have an adverse effect if whether it's a stop sign or traffic light. They will still use their emergency mode to move into the intersection as safely as possible as they do now. So. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt, what was the original recommendation? It was to keep 2nd, 4th, and 6th, wasn't it? And then four-way stops at 3rd and 5th?
yeah, yes, exactly. The only modification to that recommendation based on comments that I've received from you and even from, I think from some other people on the staff, that let's redo Second Avenue in its entirety bring it up to current standards rather than just modify it to get in what we need. Just bring that one up to the same standards as all the rest of them, so.
And then based on feedback that I guess we've all just been discussing, and then some of the community comments and business owner comments, would that still be the same recommendation that you'd suggest? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Councilor Baraboo.
Just one more comment about four-way stops. Four-way stops are still going to be at the busy times of the day, evening when people go downtown and lunchtime. There's still going to be a detriment to people getting out of those angled parking because these cars will be coming and then they'll stop and they may stack up a ways, 3, 4, 5 cars sometimes before they get through the stop signs. My suggestion would be put those pedestrian signs in every crosswalk that we have, those yellow pedestrian signs so people, state law says you gotta slow up for pedestrians. That's simple as that. And put those signs there that we have on some of our streets right now, and it does slow up the traffic because I've watched them. When they come up to those, they do slow up. That would be my only other suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think that's part of the reconstruction is that the pedestrian crosswalk will be clear and concise and meet the state law requirements for safety. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else? Any questions, comments? Looking for a potential action moving forward, one way or the other. Looking for council action.
I would move the recommendation of SEH as was documented to us.
Okay, Councilor Freely moves to approve the recommendation by SEH with respect to the traffic signal stop sign combination. Is there support for that? Support by Councilor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Baraboo?
I just have one. I think we need to take a look at Sixth Avenue. Three-way stop there, I think is plenty good enough there because you got a dead end there. And stop signs there instead of a light. Because your recommendation is instead of a light there, correct?
Yeah, I mean, Sixth Avenue doesn't, by traffic volume, doesn't warrant having a light there.
That's what I was looking at.
But again, the recommendation that, at least that we had made, that Councilor Freely had made a motion on, has a light there. So if you guys would like something different, I mean, we can certainly look at it. Again, I can tell you it does not need a light. But there are times a day, especially during school, where it might be advisable to have one there. But
The school traffic is going to go way down in the next 2 years
Well-
because the elementary portion, not elementary, high school portion is going to be gone. And that's where most of the traffic is. The elementary is parents, but they still have ways to get to the new school that'll be built.
Okay, there's a motion made to go by the recommendation that was presented by SEH with respect to the traffic signal combination. It has been moved and supported. We are in discussion mode. First, we'll go to Councilor Paulson, and then back over to Councilor Johnson. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one, I guess, thought or a question. One of the comments that was made by Mr. Stone was that it could possibly be flashing on 6th after hours. It's his last bullet point there. In the evening, is it possible to program the lights so that in the evening hours, it would be just a flashing, Matt?
I'm sure there's a way to do that, yes.
The new ones, the current ones, we cannot program. That's why we're having this predicament, is we are having a problem with them.
So if we kept the light, we could do the programming?
We
on the
definitely
light?
could. The
Okay.
programming updating, is very, very much more enhanced in the newer systems. We'll be able to do a lot more things like.
All right, thank you, Brett.
Yep.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Paulson. Councilor Johnson, and I'm looking for a clarification, Matt, on the original motion based upon what your recommendations are. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. What is our time frame on getting what we want to do on here?
We've got, so the way it's looking from a funding perspective, we're probably not going to do this part of the project until 2024 anyway. So we're a little bit, we have a little more time. We originally were going to try to get it in for next year's project, but the way it's looking now, it's probably not going to happen until 2024. So it's not an absolute urgent thing, but it's something that we do need to make a decision on so that we can start working on getting it ready and finalizing our estimates and budgeting and things like that. So, but we're probably out another year.
Thank you. And I appreciate your motion, Counselor, so that we can have this further discussion. I guess I'm not going to support this just because I'd like to see what other options would look like if the 4th Avenue intersection was just an emergency light as opposed to a full stoplight. I think the cost effectiveness of putting a full stoplight in on 4th Avenue for a year or two, it doesn't make any sense as opposed to a simplified flashing stoplights when there is an emergency necessary. And I'd also like to see the end of on 6th Avenue that looked at more. Is there a different option, again, other than a full stoplight? Because all I can think of is the movie Cars. My kids watch Cars a lot, and there's the single light in the middle of town. Is that something to do on that end that's costs less, but is also as effective when it comes to safety? So I won't be supporting the motion just on the basis of I think it's too finite at this time, and I'd like to see a little bit more research on less expensive options. Thank you.
All right, thank you. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion, please. Roll call, please.
Huffy,
No.
Baraboo,
No.
Friedlieb,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Beyondich,
Yes.
Johnson,
No.
Aaron Sally.
Okay, motion does pass, is that correct? 4-3. Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everybody that when Matt gets the plans done, we do have a chance again to look at the design and determine if that's really what we want to do. So this is not the final end all to be all because the project is a little bit out still, but yeah, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Item number 2 is Steve Rockwell to discuss the public access programming.
Would you turn on the green light to the right to green, Mr. Rockala? And just for the matter of record, state your name for the record and welcome to the community hall meeting.
Yeah, my name is Stephen Rockala, and thank you for having me here.
Okay?
Yeah, I understand the council would like to discuss some technical issues that have been happening with programming this summer.
Councilor Paulson will start the conversation. Thank you, Mr. Rockala.
Yep.
Councilor Paulson.
And thank you for coming, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So we've had a few emails that have come through the whole council.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are not staying with MediaCom and don't have DirecTV.
Yep.
So the only access that they have is to go online and watch a meeting on YouTube. And there's been a lot of technical difficulties. I don't know if it's on the uploading side, or if, even though our last meeting didn't get filmed at the committee of the whole, a lot of people were, they were interested in that topic of discussion. So I'm just wondering if you could maybe explain what the process is. And then it does seem like when the machine is going on its own, it's very clear, but when it's being filmed, it's fuzzy. So if there's a presentation, it's hard to see that on YouTube. So I don't know if you could maybe address some of those issues.
Yeah, so there was a couple instances this summer where we had it set up where YouTube would automatically turn on, but between text messages with Britt and I, they weren't working, so I went back to a manual entry to set YouTube up, and that seems to be working for now. So just for clarification, you're saying when somebody has a presentation, so like a PowerPoint slide, it goes up and that gets fuzzy you're talking about? That could be due to a resolution difference between the presenter and the stuff that's actually being recorded. I know if you're watching on Channel 5, that image is very, very, very compressed, which means, we shoot from a 19 by, or 16 by 9 ratio, and we have to compress it to 4 by 3 so it would fit on public access. And so that does degrade the quality of both the image and sound by quite a bit. But on YouTube, it should be the full standard definition. And if there's a resolution difference between the cameras and a presenter, that would be the presenter, whether they're remote or in person, could have a resolution difference on their device, if that makes sense.
Yes, and thank you for addressing that. So the other question that I have is, what do we do for those folks that there's no public access channel for them anymore if they're not subscribing? How are you guys addressing that issue as a public access point?
We are working on a couple different things that we can do, because I know as part of public access, it relies on those franchise fees from MediaCom. And MediaCom isn't willing to put in a lot of money to kind of keep the system supported. So we are working with, I've been talking with ICTV and out in Itasca to find ways that we can improve. We're working on ways that we can get the community involved, both from a personal and finding ways that public organizations can get involved as well to support. One of those things would include developing a Roku channel. So if somebody has access to like streaming on Roku or anything like that, they can be able to watch the SETI stream on there. Same with, we're working on purchasing some equipment that allows us to do a consistent stream right on YouTube, the same stream that you would watch on Channel 5. So if they don't have access to Channel 5, they can still watch it on YouTube.
Okay, and I missed the last Cable Commission meeting, but have you guys discussed
Yep.
kind of where you're heading with that direction then?
Yep, that is the plan. Right now, we're in the research phase, talking with other public access organizations around the state, seeing how they are doing it and how they're going to future-proof public access from cable cutting, because it's more and more people every year are cutting the cable. I mean, I'll admit it, I even did, because I just can't afford that. And it's cheaper just to watch streaming things, so why not put our stuff right on YouTube, or right on Roku anyways, to stream right to the internet.
Then I just have one other comment, if I may. Have there been any discussions with CTC, who is now currently installing fiber optics in
Yes.
Virginia? I know that they have that Paul Bunyan TV, which I think is a loss leader for them. I don't think it's a moneymaker, but
Yeah.
I don't know if we can enter into any discussion with the franchise fees that we're paying MediaCom to host, but I think that needs to all be explored and
I agree.
opened up.
About a monthly basis, I reach out to them to see an update on how they are doing, because even so, right now, MediaCom doesn't have any competition here.
Right.
And if CTC comes in, they know, I've talked to them plenty of times, they know our vision for public access, what we want to do, and how we need to rely on them for stuff, and they're more than willing to support it as soon as they can get that infrastructure in the area. And especially high definition, because we're still running on standard definition.
Thank you, that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Paulson. Counselor Johnson?
Can you talk about the equipment that's in the basement here? Like, what belongs to the city, what belongs to your company? What does that look like? And what, in the terms of technology, where does that sit?
All of it belongs to the city.
Okay, and where are we, if 10 was great, we can do whatever we want, and 1 is it should have been retired 20 years ago, where is that equipment sit?
As far as the Cablecast computer goes, it's brand new. I think that was installed a couple years ago, and it's doing wonderful. Like, I can remote in from any time. In fact, a lot of times when Britt texts me and says, hey, issues are going, I can remote in from my phone and fix the issue instead of having to drive all the way down here. So that's good. Some of the other equipment is what I would call a patchwork job, which means it's getting the job done, but it's kind of patched together. And so right now, what I'm actually doing, because all the equipment does belong to the city, I'm inventorying everything. And if it has a serial number, I'm putting that down too. And then figuring out how much it would cost to kind of get everything running, especially if we have a high definition support. Right now, because public access can only be done on standard definition, there's not really much we can do to upgrade the system outside of what we've already done. But I think on the side of the next steps that I would like to do is upgrade our cameras. They're about 10 years old. If we can upgrade our cameras that we do to film public events such as high school sports, the skating things, and as Councilor Johnson, you and I discussed earlier, part of my vision is to include more things than just sports, city council meetings and sports and churches. We had one member of our crew film the Land of the Loon Parade, and that actually had a really good viewership on YouTube. So different city events that are going on, we're going to send somebody to just to record it. I know that kind of goes outside of our normal duties, but I think it's important to the community. If you want to get the community more involved, you have to build it first, and they will come. So that's one of the things that we've been doing, and to do that, I'd like to upgrade the cameras. The current cameras that we do use still work, and one thing we could do with those is to get the community more involved, to lend those cameras out, as public access is supposed to do. So if somebody has something they want to film, the public is supposed to be able to come to the Cable Commission saying, hey, I want to film this and put on public access. We're supposed to lease that equipment out to them. And right now we have limited supply for that. But I'm really hoping that with our vision and stuff going forward and what we're planning on implementing, that more community will be involved, and therefore we'll have higher demand on the amount of people that want to use the equipment.
And folks can submit things to you that they've used for their cell phones for, because so what I'm kind of hearing, and I kind of mentioned to you, is we just need to have a plan moving forward, better advertisement or notices. And then my question would be, what can we in this room do to help support that? I know things aren't cheap, and I know we have limited budgets, but what else on top of that, and can we do to help support? Because you had differentiated when we spoke at Breakfast Connections, the difference between public access and community access, or something like that, where one is the public access, we can't sell advertisement or anything for, but a community access-based thing could be sponsored, and could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so the more that we can be with public access and the legality of it, like if a private company wanted to get involved, you can't have a call to action ad on the site. You can have, Bob's Fish and Tackle, they can do a segment on teaching somebody how to fish. You can wear Bob's Fish and Tackle, but you can't say, hey, I'm Bob Fish and Tackle, come and visit my store. You can't do that. And that does limit the amount that we can raise funds for. But one thing, if we did a straight-to-internet streaming service, we can, we can get a little bit more of the advertising things because it's not involving franchise fees. So that's one of the ways that we can get the community and the public more involved. I envision, selling sponsorships. You can sponsor a segment, a corporation can. Or if a community wants to contribute $5 a month for a membership donation, they can do that. But to do that first, I have to show the community what we're able to produce. And so that's where we have to build it first, and then they'll come. And that's one of those ways that Itasca Community Television has been able to grow by getting the community more involved. So if you ask how can you help as a council, is continue to share that with the community, because there's still a lot of people that don't know they can get involved. So just sharing that. I mean, I can't do everything myself as much as I want to, but I've always been good at building connections with people and helping people understand that this is just as much a part of them as me, and it's a part of the city itself. It's about the community. It's supposed to be for the community, by the community. And I'm just the guy pushing buttons.
And I appreciate that input, and it is a different way of thinking about public access. So, and I just want to let you know, and everybody else, we have asked MediaCom to come to these chambers and talk to us. What's their plan? What are they upgrading? How are they moving forward? And it's basically radio silence, and that's been going on for about 2 years, where we've specifically asked them to come. So the frustration is real. The equipment, I'll speak for myself. I had someone come into my house because my internet was not working properly. The tech told me I had too many mirrors in my house, and I don't have a lot of mirrors. And a different tech came in, and they ended up changing the cable from the pole to the house, and that helped. And I think that's one of my frustrations, is that when our citizens reach out for assistance, sometimes very little is being done. And we know the cables are old. We know the stuff running from our houses is old. And it takes us being personal advocates to get that fixed. But I also know that this council is trying to advocate for MediaCom to upgrade their other equipment, so that we have other company coming in, or hopefully coming in. I'm very supportive of that. And thank you for coming today. Appreciate it.
Okay, Mr. Rocco, thank you for coming in. What we would ask you to do, and I don't think we need this in the form of a motion, you are already working on that, but if you could come together with a plan moving forward of what your needs are, how you can make improvements to public access, to everybody who has access to this, tell us what the financial costs are associated with that, and bring that back to the elected body here. I'll go through Pamela Bean, our city clerk, or Rich Bennis, our city administrator, and we'll have to make some decisions about, based upon your recommendation, how to improve that service.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Mr. Ruccolo.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Item number 3 is discuss use of the Dryland Training Room at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center.
Okay, thank you. Once again, this is a small handout. I think it's a repetitive of what we had before. And so we're going to be discussing this moving forward. I know there was some information that was disseminated last time by the representative, by Mr. Rabbit, who's in the audience today. That was new information that some of the councilors and most of us were not aware of moving forward. So we are back here after the tabling motion at the last council meeting to discuss this dry land training room. And so I'm looking for, to open up the discussion with respect to that. I think what I would ask, if I may, Mr. Rabideau, if you'd come forward, please, or a representative, as we move again. So I see nobody's laid on yet, so I'll make a comment for myself. I understand all the questions and the comments that were made at the council meeting. I went reviewed all the notes, as hopefully all did, with respect to all the discussions about this. For me, it's about from the very beginning, what this room was specifically designated for. I went through the documents, through what was some of the notes that I could find from, or the discussions, both from conception and to the final approval moving forward. And I think that our Park and Rec Director, Brian Silver, did a great job putting together that fitness equipment as it came in. I think the difference between the YMCA operating and not operating it doesn't have a significantly adverse effect. So peeling away the onion, cutting through the chase from my perspective is that I think that it stays the way that it is. I think we should continue to use that as the dry land room. I do believe that we should continue to work on a lease agreement through our Park and Rec Department to allow the hockey program to utilize that. That's what it was really originally designed for. That's what it's been touted as. That's what it's been advertised at during the tours, but conducted by our Park and Rec Director moving forward. That was all part of that. You know, and I think that Councilor Paulson had brought this up, and I think that it's important that there's some free rates be available for those in the yoga room. So I think that you know, as we move forward with some discussion about a lease agreement, those kind of things, I think a small set of those weights could be put in there to accommodate that certain request as well. I understand the argument that it is the room that should be open, room should be open to all public, but we have that fitness room completely with the equipment. We have the yoga room that's being unutilized right now. Hopefully it'll be more utilized. And so I think that dry land training room, that was the original intent. And I would like to see, and I would vote to keep it the way it is and move toward an agreement between the hockey program on Park Rec and the city with respect to the use of that room for the long term on a lease basis. So that's my comments, Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got some clarifying questions, Mr. Rabideau. Can you please tell me what exactly the Blue Line Club does?
There's two different Blue Line Clubs, or actually three. The first one, and the one that I'm here representing, is the High School Blue Line Club, which is a 501c3 organization that is to financially support as well as voluntarily support the functions of the high school hockey program and subsidize any financial shortfalls that are created as a result of decreased budgets provided by the school and the hockey program.
Thank you. At the beginning of the last meeting, you said you were here representing the Blue Line Club, the youth hockey and high school, and I need clarification that you're officially here for each one of those organizations?
I am here on behalf of the high school boys and the youth hockey program as a spokesperson only, not as a board member.
Okay. I appreciate that clarification. One of my concerns and one of my red flags is that at the last meeting you said that the hockey, one of the hockey organizations brought in a tournament that brought in $80,000 to the community roughly, and that you have the power to say yes or no to that. Can you please explain what you're saying? Like, what exactly are you saying by telling us that?
Independently of being the president of the local high school hockey Blue Line Club, I am the District 12 director for Minnesota Hockey and have 100% discretion over where post-season tournaments are held and hosted.
So then what I'm hearing from you is you would say, no, we're not going to host any games at the New Iron Trail Motor Event Center.
I did not say that, Counselor. What I had indicated was...
Excuse me. That's what I'm trying to understand is why you would bring that up then.
Because if the hockey program continues to have its residual financial impacts to the community discounted at a manner in which I believe it is, and we are not taken seriously for what we bring to the community, and yet we continue to get pushed back with obstacles, both financially, accessibility, and whatnot, then what you're doing is you're telling us that hockey in this community is not as important as what the financial impact can be to the community. And therefore, if the accommodations are not such that it makes it worth us volunteering to bring those dollars into the community, then no, we will not host them locally.
I appreciate that clarification. And I feel like there's some confusion from my point of view. This seems to be an all or none option, like either we give the Blue Line Club, since that's who you're representing, everything they want, or they're going to look at other options. Of course, there's rumors going around town that you're going to go to one of the other buildings or you're going to build your own facility, be those what they may. My concern is that I'm not feeling any willingness to work with the city at this level to compromise. My question at the last meeting was what's going to happen between 8 and 3 September to May. And you somewhat sarcastically said, I think we all know what's going to happen. The kids are in school. You're right. The kids are in school. So why can't the city utilize that space for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week? Why does it have to be an exclusive use of that room for those folks? Why, when it's golf season, can't our students use that? Why, when it's, that's what my point is that I don't want this to be an exclusive use. That whole building is being paid for by taxpayer dollars. And yes, you are part of the community, and yes, you're a significant part of the community. However, you're not the only part of the community that uses that building. And so to be able to bring in as many people to utilize that building as possible is fine. There's been concern about moving the skating harness into that room because the skating folks don't want anybody messing with it. That shouldn't be an issue. There should be an adult in that room anytime there's a child in that room. So there should never be an issue with somebody messing with skating harnesses. The way it should be working is there's an adult in there when there's kids in there. And an adult, as defined by our agreements that we have proposed to the school district in Tavaha, is someone 21 and older. And that's my concern, is that an 18-year-old adult who's a junior, technically could be a junior or a senior, should not be supervising his or her peers. It should be an adult who has nothing to do with the school. And so those are the kinds of things that I'm looking at. I'm not saying we want you out. I'm not anti-hockey. I am pro-community. I want people to be able to use that room. I can understand not wanting to move the free weights as long as there's access to everybody to those free weights. My big hang-up, and the reason I wanted the weights moved and voted for that as well as 4 other councilors did, is so that everybody has access to those weights. We cannot legally sublease those weights to anybody. It's in our contract. Britt sent us the contract from Kansas State Bank and the agreement. Those are city property, and as long as they're city property, everybody in the city should be able to use them. And so that's where I'm coming from. I don't want you to leave. I don't want you to take your toys and go somewhere else. That's not my intent at all. My intent is to utilize that space for the citizens of Virginia and anybody else who might need it when it comes to weightlifting and power training and all that stuff. That's not me. I'm probably never going to move one of those dumbbells and to pick it up to see how heavy it is. So it has nothing to do with me having access to it. It has to do with the rest of the citizens utilizing it. So as we move forward, that's the angle I'm going with, is how do we work together to get what we both need and we both want as a city, as a community, and as the hockey folks that want that space. Because again, we have so many options, and just to clarify, this council has to direct our staff on what to do. They take their direction from us. And we authorize our staff to start the preliminary work. We didn't get the emails that were going back and forth, and to me that's irrelevant. I appreciate the work that was done, but and still even today, we don't even have a draft of The agreement you're talking about, I haven't seen that. That hasn't come to us at all. So as we move forward, I'd like to see how we can work together and share. It's a common space, it's a city space, and that's what we need to, that's what I'm going to be looking at it from now until the building is taken down and we build a new one. Thank you.
Well, we'll just go around the room. Counselor Freely, and then over to Counselor Bearable. Counselor Freely.
Well, I'm of the mind that our Park and Rec administration appropriately met with the primary user group and equipped the room accordingly and scheduled the room accordingly for the primary user group. That still leaves us 2 additional rooms that can be used for the general public, and I would trust our administration then to, again, meet with other user groups that are interested in using those areas and those fitness rooms to schedule them accordingly and to equip that accordingly, even if in fact it means us seeking some other set of free weights to move to a different room or put in a different room so that we have additional equipment if necessary. So I'm of the mind that we have to provide our administration the authority to meet with user groups and to schedule the rooms accordingly and to minimize any impact that it might have on the general public. And I think they're capable of doing that, and I think the way it's arranged right now is not impacting anybody in the public at this point in time, but is actually benefiting the entire primary user group, which is the Hockey Association at this point in time. So I would like at some further point to have a motion made towards authorizing our administration at Park and Rec to move forward with scheduling accordingly and equipping accordingly other user groups for the remaining rooms that we have that will accommodate the public. Thank you.
And also allowing, and from my perspective, before I go to Counselor Beer, we're allowing, our administration to work with the primary user group with respect to the lease, with respect to that dry room area. So it's an income generating thing guaranteed on a regular basis, which helps us utilize that revenue for other purposes within the Iron Turmoils Event Center. Counselor Bearable.
Yeah, I have a philosophy for the Blue Line Club that that free weight system should not be moved. There's plenty of space in that middle room to do things that need to be. We have to remember a couple things. We have contracts all over the place out there that are using the city facilities for money. You have the high school hockey program, $89,000, I believe, a year now, somewhere around there, that utilizes the 2 ice rinks. They're done by contract. They're offering $450 a month to utilize that space. That's $5,400 more a year on a contract basis. Why do we want to turn down any of this contract basis on public works? We got to pay for this building. Now, granted, right now, the sales tax is paying for that, and we have some leftover dollars that go into a fund, but we can't use those for, 20 years? That money that is in excess. So what if we run in a shortfall and we don't have these facilities paying the monthly fees or the yearly fees on this facility? The other thing I look at, we touted and we pushed that we wanted all these youth hockey tournaments in the winter, and they can be carried into the summertime because we still have ice there. The figure I heard, and I believe they have documentation that are brought in when they had these big tournaments, a couple on a weekend, $80,000 into the community. Do we want to turn that down from the community? Where none of these other entities, even though the public may get to use these, are going to be paying fees like high school is doing, like the Blue Line Club is offered to pay. We need to have consistent revenue coming into that building. We already have secured a mining operation that had 800 people here, and they secured it for 2 more years. That was huge dollars. So just think about those events. They're renting the space when they do that. What's the difference? So it's a long-term lease and rental. I call it a rental of that property. What's the difference between that and having a short weekend leasing and money coming in? Same thing. You're putting together legal documents to have them in that facility. That's my point. We're here to serve not just Virginia, but the whole Quad Cities Iron Range area. That's what that building was set up to be, because there wasn't one in this area. And we will get things like the League of Minnesota Cities here, all those type of venues. We've had offers of other big venues coming there. Maybe in the long run, there'll be 365 days that there's no utilization except for programs in that facility. Who knows? But it's a state-of-the-art facility that anybody that's used it. And I think we should leave it where it is, figure out a contract for the Blue Line Club or youth hockey, whatever it might be. Granted, I'm concerned about safety, so I agree with Counselor Johnson that we need somebody of 21 years of age just to prevent our liabilities from happening on that facility if somebody were to get injured. And that could happen in any place in that building. But we have insurance also that we pay for every year that covers things. So that's my point. I want them here. I want to see them here. I want them to have a contract with the city of Virginia for utilization of that space. And hours can be figured out by our administration. They're doing that right now. They've sent us programs. They've sent us all the stuff between figure skating, youth hockey, high school hockey, how those ice surfaces are being utilized. And we didn't have any problem with that. We may have, some of us may have, but it's there. And Brian Silber and his staff and Park and Rec have put together and had a lot of meetings with individuals. And I want to see that continue. I want our city attorney to put together something that's feasible. We can move some stuff. We got all the other stuff in that one room. It basically duplicates most of the free weight stuff, other than you can't change weights as easily as you can in a free weight room. But that equipment is all open to the public, and there's a ton of equipment in there. So that's my comments, but I don't want to see them looking for anything else, going someplace else. You've got the girls' hockey programs in there. Got to remember that, too. They're there utilizing, and they're paying through the high school fees. So, and it's not just hockey. Those rooms can be used. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Councilor Paulson. If I could just make one quick comment before we move to Councilor Paulson's comments. You know, we need to act, that's true, and we need to move forward to give our staff some direction moving forward. But just want to go over quickly, really quickly, the notes was part of the discussion moving forward. And this is something that was conversation between the primary user group, the Hockey Association, and whatever acronym they're using, with our Park and Rec Director, Brian Silber, moving forward with some kind of a arrangement for that dry land room. They would provide the insurance, flooring to be installed by the Wolverine Blue Line Club, cost of the equipment, agree to a 3-year deal, could be more than that, available for use during normal hours. Facilities can be locked out with notice by the city, required list of adult key holders, required supervision. And if there's abuse, the facility can be suspended privileges of an individual user or the whole organization if necessary. These are discussions that went with our Park and Rec Director moving forward. We don't have anything in writing yet, but these are something in our discussion. We should allow these to continue because this is a primary user group. This is something that's been discussed moving forward. And I have a lot of other comments that I can make with respect to that, but I'll hold those in abeyance and move over to Councilor Paulson. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Dan, and the group for coming again. Just after reviewing, you know, I have to be honest, I was really surprised by that document that you gave us. I mean, none of us were really aware of that. And then after kind of talking through a few things, I have some questions because I don't believe that we actually gave any direction. That's why we were having meetings to look at the space to actually give the direction. So that's where I'm coming from, and I still have some sort of an issue with exclusivity of usage when it's taxpayer purchased equipment. So I don't know if that can be addressed, or from a legal standpoint, if that is illegal, that we can do exclusivity on a taxpayer asset. That language was pretty strong in that contract.
Mr. Lindsay?
So according to the terms of the Precor contract, obviously we can't sublease the equipment. That being said, the city still would be within its right to put the equipment into certain places where it would be primarily used by one user group. I think that is an option that is available. We just can't, for compensation, sublease it to another entity or person or organization.
Thank you for that. And I think part of where I was also coming from is, now that the YMCA is closed, you do have a lot of disenfranchised people that will be looking for alternative places to go. So I don't know if there's any way that we can compromise on that other user groups could utilize that equipment, but it sounds like what you're looking for is exclusivity. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then are we, as we go forward in drafting this contract, are we going to have any input going forward?
You have to look at it.
Since we haven't seen, I mean, we had never got any of that information, so that's why we had the original committee of the whole meeting at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center, was to give the input. So I feel that we really were not part of that conversation.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Paulson. And to tack onto that, there's still ongoing conversations, and I think we all agree that we give our staff the opportunity to work to agreements, whoever's using whatever facility we have, not just the Iron Trail Motors Event Center, but any other facility, and bring back a proposal to us. Now, we have some discussion that's been disseminated to all of us. We don't have the proposal that's being brought forward by our staff, particularly our Park and Rec Director, but there's been ongoing discussions. We have the documents showing and the sequence of events with respect to details on how those things are moving forward. So I would look forward to seeing some kind of a proposal being brought forth by our Park and Rec Director with respect to the primary user group and coming up with some kind of an agreement if the lease is for the sake of what's been publicly disseminated, $450 a month. You know, that's a revenue stream that we're generating from that. So I think that makes a little bit of sense. But from exclusivity, I appreciate the clarification from you, Brian, with respect to what options we have, and it's not a one option opportunity for us. So we do have some leeway. Mr. Rabideau.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do want to clarify, the $450 was exclusive of the equipment. So if we need to recreate the lease amount to factor in the use of or the location of the equipment, take the $17,000 divided by 60 months, which is the contract terms, add that to the $450. That brings us to almost to $750 a month. So I do want to point out that there's two different numbers out there. Knowing full well now what we did not know previously. We could not purchase, we could not sublease. Those are all terms and conditions that were supposed to go back to the city's legal counsel, as well as the contract terms and conditions for that equipment. Unbeknown to us, we don't have that access. Our point is, we're willing to pay for the use of the room and its contents. So if that new lease amount is $750 a month, let's multiply that by whatever term we're willing to enter into, and those are the dollar figures. So I don't want the council or the community to get hung up on a $450 lease. We're willing to pay more than that to make sure the city remains whole in the equipment as well as the use of the space. There, in turn, additional equipment can be purchased for the other rooms that might be absent today.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Rabideau. Councilor Beyondich?
Thank you. Thank you for coming in. Yes, I did take time to process everything after the last meeting. So I just have a few questions, and I think you clarified some of them, or Brian did, with in terms of safety of using free weights in that room, that you would have an adult in there when that is being used?
That is correct. And when we put supervision, it was because we needed to understand what the city's requirements are. So as of right now, it was defined to us as an adult, 18 and older. If the city's requirement is 21 and over, we're willing to adhere to that.
Thank you. And the dollar amount on the weights, in what we had for free weights was $24,730.19. the cost of the adjusted equipment list is 17,000. Can you tell me what the difference is there?
Because a couple of the pieces of equipment that were originally spec'd out were not, they did not get delivered because they are either on back order or they were decided to be cut from the overall budget, so they were not included in the final delivery list that was provided to us.
So what is in that room now on on the city's side is 24,730? Is that?
No, it's $17,008.
Okay.
So those numbers were
Thank you.
provided to us by the Park and Rec Director after a final inventory of what was delivered and installed was created.
Okay, thank you. And I do remember early on, before this was even built, having conversations on what you brought to the community. So I appreciate that. The monthly fees for that room, I think that's a good revenue stream for the city. And did you have weights in the other building before it was torn down?
Yes.
And what happened to those?
Great question. So what we were originally told was when the dryland room is reopened, we will be able to relocate that equipment. So those pieces of equipment were all stored in the building located by the big blue water tower on the northeast side of the golf course. And we were also told that the equipment was going to be refurbished so that it looked, felt, and appeared to be new in a new building. When the equipment order was being placed, we were told we were no longer going to be able to bring in that old equipment and asked if we would relocate and/or dispose of the equipment. Much of that equipment then was already sold, or unfortunately, when we went to remove the equipment, is no longer in that storage building. So where it ended up, I don't know. But it was stored on city property on our behalf, and that equipment is no longer in that building when we went to remove it.
Do you know how much equipment or dollar amount that would have been?
Just in the free weight plates alone, we had over 4,000 pounds of weights. So if you do the math based on repurchasing the equipment, it's between $2.50 and $3 a pound. So that was in the free weight plates alone. We had a complete dumbbell set that started at 5 pounds and went to 50 pounds, along with a dumbbell rack. And that was our biggest concern because we knew that equipment, other than looking tarnished, has really no life expectancy. I mean, it's indefinite, and those are the missing weights.
So do we know where the missing weights went? Or if we sold them, where the revenue from them are?
I don't believe the city sold them.
So who's in charge of that? Where did they go?
The Park and Rec building. So the
Are
Park
they
and Rec department.
usable? Are they there?
I don't know. They are not there. I was just up there recently, last week, and they are not there.
Just to tack on a little bit, Councilor Brown, just a little bit more information. These weights, I remember the discussion about the fact that they were originally going to relocate them, decided not to do that because they were old. They're going to have new equipment for the new facility. And so they were stored there. Where those, I don't know, but they're not going to go back into the Entremoise Event Center even if we find them. So you know what the math is at $2.50 a pound, whatever the case may be, plus the benches and those kind of things. That's a question I think, Councilor Beyondich, we need to find out from our Park Rec Director where that went. But as far as the equipment moving forward, that old equipment was not going to be installed, and that's why they ordered the new dumbbell set. Please continue.
But they were told that equipment would be,
Originally, before the building came down and we needed to remove it from the building, we were told it was going to be able to go into the new building. Once the building started to take shape, and then we were told it was not going to go back in and we needed to find a new home for it. This spring, we did remove many pieces of the equipment from that building that we're talking about. So not all of the equipment is lost. I want to make sure the dumbbell set, the dumbbell racks, any pieces of equipment that we didn't specifically have in an inventory list may have gone missing. Our biggest concern was the dumbbells. Many of the weight plates, we were able to recover. The bars, we were able to recover. Many of the benches, a leg press, many of those items we do have in our possession and/or have recently sold.
So you had those, you sold them because you were told this equipment would be going into that room?
That is correct, and then our commitment is we were just going to take any proceeds from that and reinvest into whatever we needed to within that room, the new room.
Thank you for explaining that, but I would be very curious to know what happened to the equipment, where it is, and if it was sold, where are the proceeds from that equipment to be used towards this? So I feel like I've pulled a string and it's unraveling. And this is information that, I mean, when we're talking about this equipment, that's a large amount of money. And that was one of my questions, is I thought you had equipment. If that was stored and going to be reused, that made perfect sense. If it's now, some of it is missing, I'd be curious to know where it went and what, if it was sold, where the proceeds from that went. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilor Beyondich. So one more discussion I think Councilor Bearable has, and then I think, from my perspective, we need to take some council action directing our staff to move forward with, based on the previous correspondence they had, that the primary user here, the Hockey Association, our park director have, to bring back something to us. Councilor Bearable.
I'm just going to make two comments here quick, and then I'll move to a motion if you'd like me to, Mayor. Number one, when we put together all these venues at the ETMEC, we don't do that as councilors. Our staff and our legal people and our attorney put together these different contracts for use of that venue, concerts, et cetera. The use with the big iron company that came in there. We just look at it and finalize it. I don't remember any of us reading every single one of those documents, and maybe I'm wrong, but I skim them. I don't read every line for line, and then when we come here to approve the venue, we just ask the attorney questions. So I don't have an issue with staff doing all this stuff right now. They've been doing it right along for the ITMEC. Am I right or wrong on that, Brett? I'm right on that, except for the final approval.
To a point, the city charter specifically states that the only people that can enter into a contract is the city council, is the mayor and a designee of the city council, which when I was hired was me.
I
So
understand that, but who's been providing all the information to that in the negotiations? Been staff. It hasn't been, I've never been sat in one except here at the council chambers when we have some questions after we've read some of these contracts. I've never sat in a negotiation for venues that go on. I don't think anybody here has, unless they go there on their own.
I think, Councilor Bearable, what we do, we have a two-pronged approach here. We have the legal process, we have the negotiation process.
The negotiation process is what I'm talking about.
By our
We
staff.
don't get involved with it, and that goes for what's going on right now, okay? We need to have the staff look at that. So I'm going to move from there unless somebody else has something. I see Julianne's put her light on, but I was going to, well, I can put a motion together first and then.
Go ahead, Councilor Bearable, if you'd like to make a motion.
I would like to move that we direct our city staff, including Park and Rec Director, to work with, what's the official, your Blue Line Club?
Wolverine Blue Line Club.
Wolverine Blue Line Club, to come up with a contract for the use and the exclusive use of that particular room for the free weight portion of the proposed contract that they come up with.
Okay, so I want you to clarify that motion. You're just making the motion for the free weights for the exclusive use of that room.
Oh, the whole exclusive use of that room. Yeah, because that's basically what you're looking for, correct?
Okay, so that's the motion. Is there support for that motion by Councilor Bearable? Councilor, okay, Councilor Bronzelli is supporting that motion. Okay, further discussion. First, Councilor Paulson, and then over to Councilor Johnson. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so I can go along with that motion. I think maybe even after a little bit of the clarification of the financial piece, Dan, that makes more sense to me. And maybe we just do some free weights for the other potential users. I can appreciate that. After hearing a lot of this discussion, it's pretty concerning that there's been all this conversation, promises, and I didn't have any knowledge of that either. So thank you for being open about how things went down. The question that I do have, though, is, are there other pieces of equipment in the, I would call the dance, yoga, figure skating, where the harness is? Are there pieces of equipment that the club will be utilizing in that room as well?
Not that I'm aware of. Part of the agreement was we were told, in addition to the room, we could utilize the other two rooms' equipment,
Right.
but we could not schedule. It had to be at the use of, if somebody else was using it, we couldn't use it, those types of things. But having talked with the high school hockey coaching staff, it doesn't appear as though it's necessary for us to be in there.
Okay. And I think that would have been a why thing with scheduling. Now that the city's here, I mean, maybe if there is a need to cross over, there will be plenty of opportunity to do that. The question of safety comes up with the harness for the figure skaters in that dance yoga room. And I'm wondering if we can, if there are community members or other people going to be utilizing that, so we don't have kids or adults hanging on that harness. If we could maybe have a lockbox and give the figure skating coaches the key to unlock, if you brought the harness on the hook and built a box around it so you could just open it and then the harness would be accessible. But that's a safety concern that I had. But I think this sounds like a fair compromise going forward, and I'm sorry that all that equipment was lost. That's not good. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Paulson. Has been moved and supported. Further discussion, Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm having a hard time processing that you guys lost equipment stored in city property, and I think that's something we need to look at as a bigger picture, is the storage of personal property on city property. I think that's, for me, that's a big challenge. What is that? Has this been reported to the police officially?
Not that I'm aware of.
It has, I guess, has it been reported to the city officially, all separately?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm still not going to support the exclusive use of the room. I think that we're missing out on an opportunity 6 hours a day, 9 months a year. So I will not support it. If it was a non-exclusive and y'all just scheduled what you were going to be using when you were going to be using, I would have no problem with it. But exclusive use for that room, it's just going to be a no-go for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It has been moved and supported. Would you read back the motion, please, Pam, and make sure that the motion is clear and concise and comports with your motion, Counselor Bearable?
Moved by Counselor Bearable, supported by Counselor Baranzelli, to direct city staff and the Parks and Recreation Director to work with the Wolverine Blue Line Club to develop an exclusive contract for use of the Dryland Training Room at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center.
Okay, that is correct motion, and that is the support of that motion, moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Beyondich.
Does that include the weights and the increased price for the monthly payment?
The motion is for them to work it out and come back with
Okay,
us.
thank
Yes,
you.
correct. Thank you.
That is correct.
It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Counselor
That is
Bearable.
correct. That's a separate issue that we will bring back once they've negotiated, because we still have to, this isn't the final approval at all, Maya, it's just the beginning steps in this. It'll still come back to us for final approval.
Thank you, Counselor Beyondich. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please, Pam.
Bearable,
Aye.
Friedlieb,
Aye.
Paulson?
Yes.
Beyondich? Johnson?
No.
Baranzelli? Cuffey?
Aye, motion passes 6-1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rabideau. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Everybody?
I would like to deviate if I may, and I apologize to the council, Mr. Jack Norman would like to speak, and I, as a professional courtesy, give him the opportunity to come to the council to speak at this late notice, give him a few minutes to talk about what we're going to be talking about under other items of concern, which is item 9, or reviewing the proposed ordinance, chapter 10, section 1038, of the moratorium of the sale of hemp derived from THC, food and beverage in the city of Virginia, Minnesota. So Mr. Norman would like to make a couple of comments, so I will, with the council's approval, I'd like to do so.
Mayor, we have another gentleman that's here also would like to speak on, he called me.
About what?
Same issue. Same issue. He called and he asked if there was a meeting today on this issue, and I told him yes. I told him what time to be here today for that item, the one you're talking about.
Okay. All right, well, we'll go with Mr. Jack Norman. Would you please come forward? Turn the green light on. And I know this is directly related to item 9 and only to item 9 under this appearance. Mr. Norman, would you please turn that green light on? State your name for the record and this person that's with you today as well.
Okay, yeah, my name's Jack Norman. I'm the Director of Marketing for the Retro Bakery, and this is one of my children, Alexi Norman, organic chemistry major and future psychiatrist. So I was asked to be here today by Mike over here, and I'm sure he'll get a chance to speak too. And I just want to be clear that what the Board of Pharmacy put in place was a legalization of 5 milligrams of industrial hemp THC. This is not marijuana. This is industrial hemp. Marijuana is sort of like a ghost pepper or habanero pepper, right? Industrial hemp is kind of like your bell peppers. So it takes a whole lot of THC to be effective in industrial hemp. Now, what the Board of Pharmacy did was took away products that we disagreed with, things like high milligram Delta 8, which we're not in favor of, and they followed the 2018 Farm Bill, which was signed by Donald Trump, and it was to help the farmers and to help small and local businesses. We are a family-run, women-owned business in Minneapolis, and what we make is really delicious chocolates, so CBD and THC chocolates. So what I'd like to clarify is that unlike the other states that have like 20 milligrams or 15 milligrams, we're at 5. And we're kind of like made fun of here in Minnesota as being the 3-2 beer of, edibles. So, but I know that there are concerns, and I'd like to address those concerns because we are one of those companies that want regulation, we want rules, and we were very happy with what the Board of Pharmacy approved. And I do know that federally things will be changing, and also that the Minnesota legislature will be adding amendments to this and looking at other things such as taxes and all of that. But one of the things that did change with this is the packaging. And I would like to pass around our packaging so you can see that we have, must be 21 years or older. This is not intended for children in any way. We list what 5 milligram would be, and we list for like a more advanced person. And then we list the activation time, so that way people, if they don't feel anything, they take more, right? And then we have, of course, on the back our sell-by date, and we follow all the rules. We have our little code here, so you can scan it and you can go right to the COA, right? So we're trying to do everything to really make this a welcoming thing for the people that have needs for pain management, have needs for anxiety. And this is actually the reason I got into this business, is because my children, who are very science-minded, I was working for a big packaging company, moving containers all around, companies like Target, Walmart, Holiday, all that. And my children educated me about the benefits of the cannabinoid system. And as I started reading about it, I started learning about how CBD and small doses of THC are very effective for health. They actually, I can't tell you, I do these events and I have like 70-year-old grandmothers coming up to me going, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This has taken away so much pain. I do not have to get medicine from the pharmacist anymore. I don't have to get we know what big pharma, they don't like this. They want to have their opiates and all that stuff. We're not about that. But it's really been a wonderful thing hearing, especially the boomer generation come up and thank me at events I've done for that they don't feel certain pains anymore, that they feel better, that they sleep better. So, there's probably a lot more. I'm welcome to questions. I'm not our public relations guy. I'm just the marketing guy, so I'm not very eloquent, I don't think, like he is. But I'm happy to try to help out with this because I think it is an important decision for your community to make. And we are in favor of okay, so one of the things we know, I will say this, that communities that are banning it or putting moratoriums have a target on their back. There are companies setting up in Wisconsin all ready to go to sell high milligram stuff to Minnesota. And so for the communities that do that, would you want your, citizens getting really high milligram counts of stuff like Delta 8? I don't think so. I wouldn't want it in my community. So, what the Board of Pharmacy did, took something that all these products have been legal for the last 2 to 4 years. And what the Board of Pharmacy did was they said, okay, we're going to put some regulation to this. We're going to take it down to 5 milligrams. We're just going to put it in edibles for now, right? We can revisit this later, but for now, this is what we're doing. And we like the rule, and we are hoping that other people choose to follow what we're doing with our packaging and trying to educate the consumer. So we're sort of preaching a responsible use of limited doses of THC. And we think it's better to be sold out of a store than to get it off the streets or have stuff come up from Mexico or all that stuff. So I think regulation's a good thing. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Norman. Appreciate it. I know we normally don't do this. We normally don't deviate from a scheduled committee of the whole meeting, but because we're dealing with this, we don't do this on a regular basis, so we thank you for coming in.
Yeah.
And I'm not aware of the gentleman behind either. That was unscheduled as well, but we'll hear his comments too. But first, before we do that, we'll go to Councilor Johnson, who has his light on. Councilor Johnson, and then over to Councilor Paulson. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment about Minnesota trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's my only reason for voting at this time to not allow it in Virginia right now, is just because you are responsible folks. The shop downtown does an excellent job of being you got great big windows. There's nothing more transparent than great big windows in the front of your shop. The only reason I voted for this is because of the need to make sure we're doing it right. I want to get it right in Virginia. A lot of the towns around here look to us as guidance and or not guidance, depending on where they are. I am full support of hemp diverse products. I think that I have worked with children who have had medical hemp, and it has changed their lives significantly, as well as knowing people when going other places that use it recreationally, that helps them adjust to life. So I'm not opposed to the hemp usage. I'm not opposed to it being in Virginia. For me, we need to make sure we're doing it right the first time, and we're getting our ordinances and everything aligned, so that in a year, when the state changes, after the next election, and who knows what's gonna happen at the state level, that we are still aligned where we need to be to make sure we're providing the best to our families and our citizens. So I appreciate you coming in and sharing that information. And I hope that this time next year, there isn't a moratorium or a ban. I think that we can do it right. So that's just where my perspective is. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Johnson. Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, I just have a couple quick questions.
Yeah, of course.
So you're from the Minneapolis area. Do you manufacture that product?
We do.
And,
We've been on WCCO. You could like Google search it.
okay,
They
and
did a little
then
feature.
are you affiliated with the smoke shop here on Chestnut Street?
No, we're separate. Mike did ask me to come here. So we sell products to companies. I'll be honest, we sell to CBD stores. I have like a lot of chiropractors are selling our products. I have chiropractors all over the state. We do sell to some of the smoke shops too, because since this law was changed, the smoke shops have reported a new brand of customer. So instead of like the young kids or like the people who are just looking to get high, they're getting in the people with chronic pain. They're getting in the, well, I'm a Gen Xer, but the skateboard injuries, yes. And then the boomer generation, they're getting in those people now. And so all of a sudden, we've had a lot of smoke shops contact us lately saying, hey, we've got a new brand of customer. They're coming in. They're looking for the 5 milligram edibles. Do you have them? And so that's to answer your question. I haven't really dealt with Mike yet, but we're starting to. But my customer base so far has mainly been like chiropractors and CBD shops and that kind of thing.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
And I think where I stand is, I support our police chief, and when she came in, really, there's such an unknown right now with the new law that is being passed. So I want to support our department in their efforts to sort this out and figure this out. I also am a business owner on Chestnut Street, and so part of me wants to assure how it would be rolled out in terms of sales, locations, whether it's a permitting process like tobacco and alcohol. I don't know, I guess I don't know much about that, but I think that's why I'm in support of this at this time, a moratorium, just so we can take a pause and understand what it's going to look like going forward as it comes to this community. So I appreciate you being here, and I definitely understand the benefits, but I have to support our department in the request that it had.
And we're all for that. So I think law enforcement can look to precedent. So we know that legalization has happened in other states, again, at a higher dosage, but they can talk to law enforcement in Colorado. They can talk to law enforcement in, Washington and California and all the other states that have legalized it, Michigan. So I would encourage your law enforcement to reach out for sobriety tests, like how other states are doing it, and look to that to help guide them to make the right decision on, when they stop somebody, what they're looking for. Yeah.
Thank you, Counselor Paulson. So any other comments or questions before we move to take a quick break and move on to the rest of the agenda? Counselor Bearable.
I have 6 items. Do you want to wait until after the break that I want to discuss with this gentleman?
Well, if it's related to a comment for Mr. Norman, fine. Otherwise, we'll wait till after the break.
Oh, it is.
Then go ahead.
Okay, the first comment is, you're wrong. The state of Minnesota, their legislative process, and background, I'm a pharmacist for 40 years.
So you know what titration is, right?
I know all this.
Yeah,
all
what
this
your
kind of
companies
stuff.
use to max people out.
They have not finished. They did not specifically in that legislation put any criteria for specific products in that. The State Board of Pharmacy did a lousy job of putting together stuff for that legislation. It's too general. You need to go back and do the amendments that you talked about.
Yeah, and they're going to be working on that, and we're all for it.
And I am not going to vote for this until those amendments are looked at after the first year, whenever the legislative session brings it up. There is no testing that I'm aware of your products that are put together and you have it, maybe on the package. How do you test? How do they get tested? Who tests them?
USDA lab.
Okay? Do you have a record of how they test them?
It's
Other than
on,
the
so
package?
all the products, according to that, we have a code. And you can take your cell phone and scan the code and it'll go right to the lab report.
So are we going to
do that.
understand that there aren't illegal stuff that was happening with the other drugs that we banned in Virginia, the stimulant drugs that we banned in Virginia? Are there any cities that have done that? Because they don't know the content, and they were being sold here, that product, with doses way higher than were approved by legislation. I'm concerned.
We
Coming across
don't
from-
make those products. I can't speak on those companies' behalf. I can
Okay,
only speak
okay,
to
I
what we
understand
do.
that.
Yeah.
But my concern is what you talked about Wisconsin. Now, I would be willing to go down to the state legislature and tell them it's importing of a product illegal in Minnesota. If somebody imports, they've got a problem with a misdemeanor or something, if they come across from the Wisconsin line.
And
with the
Nebraska
higher-
did that to Colorado. Nebraska sued the state of
And
Colorado.
I have friends
won.
in Colorado that their whole small towns have gone to, you know what, I won't say it because it's not very nice language. And they've come back to Minnesota because they can't stand living in Colorado because they're getting all the transient population on these particular THC drugs and the rest that are sold like you're talking about. They're getting there. What happens if they combine 5 milligrams, more 5 milligrams, more 5 milligrams throughout the day? There's no testing for how much they have in their system. There's not a test around unless you go to a lab, and for somebody out driving and stuff like that, there is not a test like the breathalyzer test for THC or any of the lesser products. And I'm concerned about people on the highway that may have impaired cognizance of where they are, what they're doing.
Well, that's just
The
speculation.
cities have the right to license these facilities also, correct? If we do it, we're a charter city. So we can license the distribution to certain facilities in this town if we want to. That's a possibility.
Yeah, I would encourage, again, I'm selling to a lot of chiropractors and CBD shops. This is about health and wellness. And again, like I said, the smoke shops have a new type of
I
customer.
understand that. I
And
understand.
then Mike is a responsible business owner. I do know that.
I didn't say Mike wasn't, okay?
Yeah, no,
I haven't
Mike's
said
great.
any of that. But you also have to take a look at that. Where am I going with this now? That individual facilities, we had that problem with the stimulant drugs. That's why we banned the stimulant drugs, the ones that were being sold over the counter. We banned them here in Virginia. We still don't allow them in Virginia, Minnesota. And we did this with the aspect of our police department. I'm concerned about the upgrade of these. I saw this in our legal products that you can use right now. That are prescription, yes, but they're all there that if you want to use them for pain, for other things, for epilepsy, all those particular entities that individuals have. Now, granted, they may see benefits from this, but I see negatives from my profession, okay?
Of course you do.
Yeah,
Well,
and I'm going
okay.
to for the rest of my.
Yeah, I mean, because it hurts your industry, that's why, so.
Okay,
I-
let's,
yeah.
I'm asking those questions.
okay, that's enough. Okay, I tell you what.
Mayor, I haven't finished yet.
Well, let me intervene just for a moment, if I may.
I want to bring one point clear before I finish.
Okay.
That one point is, the state legislature is going to take a second look at this, okay?
That's where on section 9, that's where we're going to be discussing,
Yeah.
is section 9.
And
We just
we're-
had
and we're all
Mr.
for
Norman here just to make a comment, and then all those information you provided, we'll discuss in section 9, which is the,
Well, I thought that's what we did. We moved it up, didn't we?
no, we did not. We just gave Mr. Jack Norman an opportunity to speak.
All right, okay. And I'll leave it.
Thank you,
I'll leave it
guys,
go.
I appreciate it, and I.
Okay, thanks for coming up, Mr. Norman, and thank you very much for doing so. Okay, thank you kindly. So Councilor Bearable had this gentleman come forward. Could,
Yeah, and I want to clarify something to you, Mayor. I am.
could we please
No, I
have
want
him?
to clarify it with you.
Yeah, please do.
Okay? I am very ticked off at you for saying that I cannot invite somebody that calls me after hours, that I can't get a hold of our clerk and stuff to get it put on the emergency part of the agenda. He called me later on, so I couldn't get it on there, and I invited him to this meeting because it's public.
That's
That's what
fine.
I did.
That's fine.
But I
don't
got
have-
a bad taste when you said that that shouldn't be done, you weren't going to allow him to speak. That is wrong by our rules of this council.
Okay,
All
Counselor Baraboo, that's not the case. The case is that, as I said, was that we don't normally do this, but when somebody wants to come and speak on behalf of a certain circumstance, this is a committee of the whole meeting, we allow that person to come to speak. So,
All right, but I wanted to clarify that I did not get this during business hours.
sir, would you please come forward? Thank you very much, and would you please state your name for...
Yes, my name is Muhammad Wazwaz. I also go by Mike.
Okay, Mike, welcome to the committee of the whole meeting, and please, thank you.
And I just want to say that this stuff has been legal now for over 2 years, 3 years from the Farm Bill. And then the state tries to regulate it, and now the city of Virginia wants to ban it. And it helps so many people with PTSD and all kinds of, ailments and health problems. And I know that this probably will pass. I was hoping that the city can regulate it and pass laws, where who can sell it, for example, what licensing is required. Okay, because many of our seniors, this helps them if they have many ailments. I'm going to disagree with Councilman over there. That's a former pharmacist. I think the stuff from the pharmacy is way more dangerous than natural that's derived from hemp. And I know that. I've been in a wheelchair for 20 years. Okay, and nothing from the pharmacy is going to help me more than something natural that the mighty creator created. Okay, that's how I feel. Synthetic is much worse than something that God Almighty created. Without respect, Mr. Pharmacist. And I know that the city is worried about impaired drivers and that the police are well respected. Of course, I respect our police departments. And I know that, the things that they're saying is important for public safety. Okay, but this stuff's been around for hundreds of years. It's not like it's not in the city of Virginia before, the Farm Bill came through or anything. I mean, we would be naive, right? I mean, do you remember high school? So I'm just saying that, for the city to regulate it, and so it can help people that need it with physical ailments that they don't want to go to their pharmacy and get stuff that's synthetic and that's addictive and that has severe side effects for some people. And that's all I have to say, and I want to thank you for letting me speak.
Well, and we thank you for your patience as we went through this committee of the whole meeting. And I think, Mike, if I may,
Yes, go ahead.
our goal and objective is not to dissuade or with respect to what the law is and what the Farm Bill was a couple of years ago. We simply want to put a more temporary moratorium on until we can do that very same thing, determine the regulation aspect, determine the areas where they can be sold, who can sell it, how often can they sell, what are the hours of operation can they sell it. And then the other component is the impaired driving component, but that's just one of many components. So we want to have an opportunity to take a look at it. I don't think any of us disagree that, that the law is the law, but we have to figure out how to comply with the law and the licensing restrictions, the ordinance moving forward. And I think that's why the action that we're going to be taking under item 9, under other items of concern, is to put a temporary moratorium until we can figure all this out.
I understand the city's concerns. I will remind you, sir, that people can buy this online because it is federally legal. So, for example, our customers will either be able to drive to Hibbing if they don't pass the same moratorium. They will be able to go to Duluth. They will be able to go to the state of Wisconsin. They can get it online. I just want to make that apparent, just so you know. So I would definitely, during this moratorium, find out what you're going to do, what regulations you're going to pass, so that way the people in this area can access it if they have health ailments, because the doses are very small. It's mild but effective, in my opinion. So thank you very much, Councilor.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it very much for coming up. Very kind of thank you, Mr. Kingsley, for helping Mike out. Okay, So we're going to be discussing it even further under item 9 here, so that'll bore some additional conversation with respect to this. But it's been a long meeting so far, and what I'd like to do, if we can, first, before we take a break, Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. And I don't know if I need to put this in form of a motion or if you will just allow it. The Kingsleys have been waiting and we've jumped around on our agenda. If we could
Sure, let's move
get
them
them,
up.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Beyondich. Thank you for, I was remiss, should have done that earlier. Thank you. Before we go on a break, let's just bring this item on the agenda, if we may, Britt.
Item number 7, which is update on 410 Fifth Street South, Virginia.
Thank you. Brian, do we had some preliminary discussion about that for the Kings and for all of us.
So I do have an update, Mayor. I did reach out to Mr. Sundquist, who represents Mr. Toman. I did receive word that Mr. Toman was not going to agree to have an inspection done. We have started the process of the administrative warrant. That process, there's 2 ways that process can unfold. One way is what's called ex parte, which means the court would review an application and issue it immediately. That is not going to be the case for this proceeding because it's not an immediate emergency. The court is going to require us to have a hearing before it issues that administrative warrant. That process has been begun, and what we actually have done in order to save some resources, we've combined the administrative warrant process with the ultimate enforcement or approval of the council's order into one proceeding to save a filing fee. But we have started that process and should have that going shortly, as soon as the court assigns us a date.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the council? Councilor Beyondich?
Thank you. Excuse me for not understanding. So the process has started?
Correct.
The paperwork is filed?
We have, I believe it is filed, yes.
Okay, and you have the date of that filing? So we have all of that on record?
Yes, we just don't have a date for the hearing yet. We've got to
Okay.
be assigned that date.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Beyondich. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Kingsley. Okay, please do. Thank you.
Hi.
Welcome once again.
Thank you. So do we have any kind of time frame as to how long that can take?
I can't give you a specific timeline. It's all dependent on what dates the court assigns, so it has some, it depends to a certain extent on what the court's calendars are. What I can tell you is this, I expect 2 dates. Number 1 will be the date for the hearing on the administrative warrant, which I trust will happen relatively quickly. I trust that the court is going to treat this more like in the nature of a harassment, or not a temporary restraining order than it is a motion. On motions, we've got specific timelines by rule that we have to adhere to. When the court sets a hearing on something like a temporary restraining order, basically what it does is it looks for its first availability because it understands that the parties are looking for some immediate relief or some immediate action from the court. And really the sole purpose is to give the other side, in this case to give Mr. Toman, an opportunity to be heard at that hearing before the court issues the administrative warrant. Given the case law that I've reviewed and given the facts and circumstances surrounding this, the most common utilization of an administrative warrant is to do property inspections. And one of the primary reasons that the courts really are bound to hold hearings in these, if it's not a case of immediate emergency, is to address concerns that tenants who are residing in the property may have. In this case, there are no tenants, there is no occupants of the property. And so I trust what the court will do is hold a hearing, provide some reasonable restrictions on the timing of when the administrative warrant or the inspection can be carried out. And I trust that that will be issued in short order. We just have to get the date.
So is there anyone within the court system that I can pressure because they don't seem to find it to be pressing, whereas I find it to be extremely pressing, and I do also find it to be a health hazard. And now we're experiencing harassing behavior such as leaving smoke detectors beeping and leaving lights on in the building even though nobody's there. So Mr. Toman seems to be escalating this. So
What I want to know is there anyone within the system that I can put pressure on to put pressure on Mr. Tolman?
I think you can relay your concerns to court administration, or if you'd like, you can relay them to my office, and I'll make sure that they get included. As a general practice, we typically try not to pressure the judges directly. And truly, the judge should be independent from all this, and so we shouldn't, in our firm, our office, we would have no direct contact with the judge. All of our communication for the court goes to court administration, so.
And so the continuing blight that's taking place there, we now have weeds that have grown up to the second story of that house. And we sent our blight department out and they cut the grass in a haphazard manner, and everything else is left as is to still be just a god-awful eyesore. Is there pressure that I can put on the blight department? Is there someone I can talk to within the blight department to tell them you're not doing your job?
And Mayor, if I may, the court proceeding on the hazardous building issue and the condition of the yard is, in terms of the long grass or long weeds, those are two separate. I don't believe that it was that the length of the grass was addressed. It's the health and safety concerns of the structure that are addressed by this court proceeding. So the blight condition is a separate condition that the city can continue to address.
So I think, if I may, in answer to your question about the blight, that is our responsibility as a city to enforce the blight ordinance. And if we're not, then we need to be doing so. And so the pressure shouldn't come from you. The request and the direction should come from the city council and staff. Councilor Paulson, and then over to Councilor Beyondich.
Mayor, this is so frustrating. I mean, I can't believe that now the city is getting wrapped up in a court proceeding for a hearing that I believe when we originally started this, did the property owner not sign the document saying that there would be a final inspection after 120 days or whatever? Did we not get something in writing stating that that was already agreed to? Didn't we?
Brian?
My recollection is that the property owner requested or wanted a final inspection.
So why do we have to take a court action for access when that was, it's a signed document, it's already been legally agreed upon? I don't understand why, and I don't understand why the city has to go in and take care of and maintain and mow and cut or do whatever, and we are, the city, the taxpayers are bearing this burden when you have a landlord that is absolutely negligent. So I don't like that the city is now involved in a court action. And I know that that's what you said the process was, and we were all fully aware of that. But, you know, we're dealing with two parallel tracks. You've got continuing blight going on, and then we have this inspection process going on. And I want to know, did we not have an agreement signed that there would be an inspection after that 120 days? Or what was it, 160 or?
No, 120. And what was the
120?
purpose of the 120 days when we knew damn well he wasn't gonna comply to this?
Brian?
Here, if I may.
Yes, thank you.
The 120 days is required by statute. Before the city can take action, the city council issues an order, and then by statute, the property owner is given 120 days.
But we had also said that there were to be intermittent inspections during that process to make sure that there was indeed progress being made, and if those inspections weren't or it wasn't up to spec, that we were going to alter that. He never agreed to any inspections throughout this whole process, and he's never done one piece of work to that building, and now it seems a lot like I'm back to square one again.
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. So we did, both myself and Ms. Sibenes did attempt on several occasions to coordinate inspections of that property. I don't recall a signed document. I'll look back through my documents. But there's no requirement within the statutory provision that we're using or the process that we're following that requires him to give us permission for inspections. And for some reason, he did agree early on to the initial inspection and allowed the city staff and the inspectors to go through. Since then, we have not been able to get agreement on any further inspections. And as far as being back to square one, on the issues that have been identified that are a part of the order that was issued by the council, we are ready to proceed to court for enforcement, and that process has begun. And so we're not back at square one. It doesn't feel like the satisfaction that I think everybody or the neighbors in the community were looking for, but this is what the city can do. We can go in and we can address those issues that make this property hazardous. And that's what we are committed to and continuing to do.
And he is now currently being represented by counsel, is that correct?
That's correct. He's being represented by Carl Sundquist.
Very good, thank you. Kingsley?
I'm just a little short on words right now because everything in my head is just anger and disgust at this. You know, we talked about legal action. You talked about a nuisance. Can I, on my own, pursue the Minnesota Department of Health? Because this is a health hazard to myself and my family. We do have rodent infestation. There's strong indicators that there's mold in that building. I consider it an extreme fire risk in that their garage is probably 4 feet from my garage, so if that burns, my garage burns, my trailer burns. If their house burns, my house burns. I'm concerned for my family's health and well-being. I sleep on the 3rd floor of my home. That place catches fire and catches my place on fire. Am I going to be able to get out? He's got a dead tree between his house and my house that now has another dead limb leaning towards my house. So when that comes down and damages my house, am I going to be on the hook for my damage to that? Answer is yes, I am going to be, unless I file formal notice to him, which I'm going to do, that he's got a condition affecting my property. So it's all on me right now.
Let's address the blight issue again, if we may. Counselor Paulson?
Thank you. I didn't mean to cut anyone off. I have some questions. Every time that the city workers go out there and do anything, are we billing the landowner for this?
Correct, yes.
And does it get assessed, or is it just a bill? Is it
It's
assessed
not
on their?
paid, it's assessed in November. It goes on the taxes for next year. We approve it in November.
So if he pays a portion and then makes a payment plan, nobody's really collecting any money at all?
With the county, correct.
I mean, it's futile. This is totally futile, and I need to know what other resolve we can do. I mean, I don't know why we can't go through condemnation proceedings like we did on 8th and 3rd, that apartment building. I mean, I know it says structurally, there needs to be a structural reason, but maybe the garage isn't structurally safe, but that's why they wanted an independent person to actually go in there and do a different inspection. And we also were told that there was a health department component that was supposed to be in one of those original inspections. I mean, I've just about had it with this whole process.
That building will never be habitationally sound. You cannot put enough money into that dwelling to make it habitational. The last person who lived in there, which was 5 years ago, went to a mortgage company to try and buy out the contract for deed. And the mortgage company said that the building was not worth $20,000 and that you could not put money into it to the point where it would be worth rebuilding. So structurally, yeah, maybe it's still going to be standing there, but it's going to be standing there as an empty dump that will not be inhabited by anybody. And in the meantime, now I'm so furious that we're starting to look into options for moving from the city. My problem is that my property is so badly devalued because of that. I talk to realtors and they say you should be able to get $250,000 for your house, but you probably won't get more than $100,000 because of the dump next door. And you tell me that's not affecting me personally and my family. I'm so sick of this crap and how long we've been doing it. And all I want to do is move from this town. I want nothing to do with it at this point because I've gotten nowhere for 15 years. I'm done. And quite frankly, I mean, when Julianne talked last meeting about should I, seek legal action against the landlord, and quite frankly, the landlord's not who I'm going to seek action against here. And I'm sorry if that sounds like a threat, but it's 15 years of frustration.
So, once again,
I just need that question answered, if there is any other remedy that we can do. It just seems like there needs to be some other remedy that we can take as a city.
well, following the law is the remedy, but are there options? Can you answer that question, please, for Councilor Paulson? No, please, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So here are the options. We have, we're pursuing the hazardous building process that's provided by the state. We've given notice, we've gone through the 120 days. We, once the order is confirmed by the 6th Judicial District here in Virginia, we will be able to go in and correct any of those things that have been identified as health and safety concerns that make that building hazardous. The reports that have come back to the city have indicated that the building is structurally sound, which means if we wanted to condemn the building, it would actually be an exercise of eminent domain, and we would have to pay the reasonable value of that building, just like we have for the relocations on the public safety building. And so is the option of condemnation or taking it to eliminate the blight an option for the city? It is, but you'd end up paying market value for it. And then thirdly, we can continue to enforce the blight ordinance and just try to force compliance with that. The remedy for that is citations and essentially or eventually potentially a public nuisance action. But where we would end up is right back here, because unfortunately, when we are enforcing the condition of properties, or when we're trying to enforce the compliance with the city's code, that's what we're limited to. We're limited to enforcing the compliance with the city code and to make sure that there's no health and safety concerns that affect the public or create hazard conditions. In this case, we're pursuing that. We've got the blight ordinance enforcement that it sounds like there's been some activity there. There's some charges, some costs that are going to be going back to the landlord. The neighbors have a right to bring their own nuisance claims if they have identified damages to themselves personally that are above and beyond what the city is addressing. And personal claims, you always have a right to bring a private cause of action against your neighbors. And in this case, that is the extent of the remedies that are available. And unfortunately, it doesn't feel satisfying, but the city is bound by the confines of the law.
So in regards to the blight then, so it's my understanding that city people have actually come and done work to the property and charged Mr. Tillman for that? When we filed a blight notice, or when you folks filed a blight notice, was it the city that came out and did the work? Because if it is, you've got to look at the work your staff is doing, because it's ridiculous. Weeds 8 feet high that we didn't take care of, that we didn't cut down? Who's in charge of that crew?
If I may, Mr. Tolman, or Mr. Kingsley, last time you were here, we have to give him notice and give him X amount of days to mow. He did it last time.
Okay,
not the blight.
so after
We
he
have in the
does
past,
that?
the last 5 years, we have mowed the property, we have put assessments on. So now that he's gotten his notice, that's the only notice you get one per year, and that's it. So if it's long again, we go and we mow, no matter what. He doesn't
Yeah,
get
but
it.
the grass is one thing, but the brush that's 8 feet up the side of the building, 10 feet up the side of the building, we can't include that in on it?
It depends on what brush it is, what's brushed to you and what's a plant to him, and that's, yeah. He apparently saw some value in it. We don't necessarily see value in it, so we will go take care of it. But it's.
Anything else? I don't even know if I can do this anymore.
What the use of the 120-day order is.
The state statute requires that.
Right, but now, this whole new process that you brought up today, that's new to me. That is absolutely new. And in this whole 120 days, we've been asking, when it gets to 120 days, are we gonna have any surprises? Guess what happened today? You surprised us.
Well, it's the court procedure that's next up. Would you please explain, Brian?
Yep, so the order that was issued, and this has been the process, and I've relayed this process consistently all along. The process is, once the 120 days is up, we then have the ability to file that order with the court. The courts we'll take a look at it to make sure that the council acted within its discretion in issuing the order. Assuming that the courts find that that discretion was exercised appropriately, the courts will confirm or approve that order and give it the weight of a judicial order. And once that it's given the weight of a judicial order, that gives us the ability to enter upon the property and do anything that the city deems appropriate to correct the items that were included within the order. And so it is the same system. The administrative warrant procedure or the administrative warrant system, we don't necessarily need to do that. We can skip that step. The risk then is we go in and there's some work or some change that we've got to evaluate before we take any action to correct the deficiencies. It's basically the administrative warrant procedure is a step to get an inspector in to verify that the conditions still exist in the same manner, and we're not expending needlessly city resources to send crews out to do work.
So a couple things that brings up. What we're looking to do to this building, or what you're looking to do to this building, was based on the inspection that happened roughly 130 days ago. That was done by the assistant engineer, I believe, to the city, and was wholly inadequate at inspection. I mean, it was a joke as far as an inspection goes. They barely went in. They did not go in the attic of that property. They did not go in the garage of that property. They did not walk around the entire property. And now we're going to base the safety and well-being of my family on a report that I feel is entirely inadequate. And you already know how I feel about Mr. Cole and his relationship with this. He indeed is an acquaintance of Mr. Tolman and should have never been involved. In fact, should have recused himself from this. So when this independent person comes in, can they do a more thorough inspection? And if they find more than Christina's inspection, will that be included in that report as far as what the city does going forward? Or are we just basing it on the 12 things that they said when they did their first inspection?
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. If the independent inspector goes in and finds additional items, we can address those items, but it would not be in the order that would go before the court. What we're limited to are the items that were included within the original report. We can't change the order. I suppose we can change the order, but it would require another 120-day notice period. We are bound to the order issued by the council initially in this proceeding.
So a question for myself and the Kingsies as well. So is there a formal written inspection report that's conducted and filed on by our city code official with respect to this particular property? And that was included in the 120 days for correction, and therefore that inspection report is a matter of record that goes before the court. Is that correct, Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, that inspection report would be a part of the proceeding to confirm the order that was issued by the council. And the inspection, I worked directly from the inspection report and used the items directly from the inspection report in preparing the order that the council made.
And there is a mortgage against this property, is that correct?
Mayor, if I may.
Brian, please.
There is a mortgage. It appears, what it appears from the record is that this property secures a larger mortgage that spans several properties.
And so is there a way to find out who that mortgagee is?
There is, and in fact, I don't have the information right before me, but the mortgage company has been given notice of the proceeding that ultimately is headed to court here.
Okay, but I would like to get in touch with the mortgage company and let them know that they have financial interest in a property that is endangering my family. I think that would hold some weight. I would also like to know if there's a mortgage against that property also has to be insured. And I'd like to go after the insurance company also and let them know that they are insuring a property that is hazardous not only to my health but the general public. So I really would like to know how to find out who that mortgagee is.
Well, Brian, can we provide that to him?
We can. As a matter of procedure, what I'd ask you to do, just as a formality, is to prepare a data request form asking for, essentially what you could ask for is the notice letters for the property owner notice in this matter. And those notice letters will include the name of the mortgage company.
Thank you. I think that's all I have unless you.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. So we'll go around the room. First, Counselor Biondi has been patiently waiting, then back over to Counselor Paulson, and then over to Counselor Baraboo. Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you. Do we have a record of how many times the city crew has been over to remedy the blight?
Yes, I don't have it with me, but we do.
Do we know if he's current on his property taxes?
Yes.
He's up to date on those? And I'm so sorry you've dealt with this for 15 years. Going forward with the new rental code ordinance, I certainly hope you are in the audience. People are afraid of this rental code ordinance, but this is the very reason we need to do something. I feel for the 3.5, almost 4 years that I've been sitting here and listening to this, it is now a game. This is a game that's being played with the city of Virginia.
The system, these people have a system, and this is how they play the city. And you and I as taxpayers end up paying for their properties.
Absolutely. And this just, I was also under the impression that the 120 days, and I understand action is being taken, and it's a process, it's a long process. I just don't want to see us going back to where we started, that if nothing happens in that court, that we're right back to dealing with this property. It's a shame that it took us this long to deal with something you've had to put up with as a rental property. So as I look at that rental code ordinance, and I've sat through those meetings, people are a little hesitant on it, and I have to flip that coin because you and several other people live next to rental property that is not taken care of, and there's no consequence, and the neighborhood goes downhill. So hang in there. I know. But please be a part of that rental code ordinance because the public needs to hear what you've put up with and what we as a city have had to put up with for 15 years. So I commend you for hanging in there. We will continue this journey. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Beyondich. Counselor Paulson, then over to Counselor Baraboo.
Thank you, Mayor. So it was my understanding when Mr. Kingsley had asked to have a secondary inspection with an independent inspector, it was to address his concerns of the first report and the findings of that first report, that an independent person may have had a different report. Now we can't, now it's beyond the 120 days to go and act. So now what we're basically doing is at the end of the 120 days, we've got to go in, because that's what the law says, 120 days after whatever it is. But that doesn't give the opportunity, which is what the request, the reason for the request is to have a potential different outcome with that report. So now what's going before the court is the report unamended or unchallenged, and I'm not being disrespectful to any of our city staff, I don't mean it in that way. It's just I think the basis for bringing that forward a second time was to see if there would have been other changes with an independent inspector. So now that opportunity is lost. We
Brian?
have to go with the document that was provided by the first inspection.
Correct. And to be clear, if a second inspection, even if a second inspection would have been conducted during the 120-day period, we can't amend the order. Issuing an amended order would reset the 120 days.
Okay, so that helps me and that clarifies. So then I don't want to take much time, but I do want to talk about a question regarding eminent domain. So if the city decided to take an eminent domain action, and it's based on fair market value, which we've gone through that already, we understand kind of what that looks like. Knowing that the property would need to be removed, would that charge of removal or demolition be charged to the property owner? Or is there a trade-off with those two, with an eminent domain action versus a demo and fill cost?
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. In a respect, there is. So we could not, the city would not be able to demo and charge back the cost incurred in that demo. Essentially, where the trade-off occurs is if a property is at such a condition, then the reasonable market value of it drops lower, and the city would be able to acquire it at a lower price. But we can't require that the property owner do anything before we acquire it, or that there be conditions on that acquisition. Basically, what the city does in an eminent domain is it says, we have a public purpose for acquiring this property, and it has been held that economic development, improvement of properties, and elimination of blighted properties can be public purposes that would support exercise of an eminent domain action. But we're bound then, once we decide to exercise that power, we're bound to pay the reasonable value of that property, the market value of that property, which, if it's in a very poor condition, should be lower than it would be if it were in a better condition.
And I guess where I'm going with that is I'm wondering, we're just going to keep racking up costs and court costs and city crews going in and assessing or cleaning or blight. So my question is, at what point is the trade-off? So I don't know if that's anything that the council would have in its will, but I would be open to exploring that, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Counselor Bearable?
I guess I was going kind of the same direction as Counselor Paulson is doing. Once the courts decide that we can have a second inspector or an independent inspector in there, and they determine that certain things can be repaired and stuff to make it habitable, if they come up with that conclusion, that cost is borne by the city then, not the owner, correct? So where are we ahead by doing that and then not going to eminent domain? How long will that take, Brian, or would that take? Is that months again, or is it quick if the landowner agrees to sell that to the city? Because we could incur as much cost repairing that with the price of materials and shipping and everything now, if we're directed to do that and the courts would direct that after the inspection, correct?
Mayor, if I may.
Brian?
So the answer to that is kind of yes and kind of no. The court's not going to direct us to do anything. The court's not going to say, you've identified a toilet on the second floor as being a problem, go change the toilet. The court is going to say, you have identified health and safety concerns. We are giving you the authority to go take whatever action is necessary to correct the items that you've identified as problems. So as far as an eminent domain or a taking action, it's a mixed bag. I mean, could we get possession relatively quickly? Yeah. I mean, you can have possession of a property within 3 or 4 months, which in terms of general litigation is moving along pretty quickly. That being said, the actual full eminent domain action, you're probably looking at 8 months or maybe a little bit better while you appoint referees and have an evidentiary hearing to find what the value is. Before we would endeavor upon that course, I think our experience, especially with the public safety building, you may want to just have an appraisal of the property done to see what the actual value. I mean, are we talking $10,000 or $20,000 for an acquisition price, or are we looking more in the neighborhood of $100,000 or $120,000 for an acquisition price? And in that process, the property owner has the ability to contest, to obtain his own independent appraisals, and to argue to the court that the value that the city obtains isn't the value.
But when the property owner goes in year after year and applies to the city to have their value of the building decreased because of the condition of it, so that they can lower their taxes, that's got to be a pretty compelling argument to them that the place is a dump and shouldn't be acquired for more than minimal cost, the lot value, if you will.
Correct, Brian? Well,
It would be one piece of evidence that the panel of referees would have to take into consideration.
Real quick, if I may.
Yes, Counselor Freely.
Bruce and Jean, I mean, I feel for you, I really do. And, you know, you have justifiable frustration without question. But I just want you to know that it's all of us and you doing everything we can to remedy this problem. So let's contain that frustration and anger with the landlord of that building as opposed to all of us trying to teamwork this to get something accomplished. That's what I want to see, is that it's not us against you or us against them, it's all of us in you trying to remedy that landlord's neglect of his property, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Yeah. Anything else, Mr. Kingsley?
No, thank you.
Mrs. Kingsley? Counsel? Would you let us know about that court date? I will. As soon as possible, and inform the Kingsleys as well.
Yeah, I would like to
I'd
appear
like
at
to
that
be
hearing.
at that court date as well, as I'm sure others would too. And of course, you, both of you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a long meeting so far. Does anybody need a break before we bring Jody up? She's been very patient. So let's just take it. Jody, can we take 5 minutes? Okay,
Can I
thank you.
make
We're
a
just going to
motion?
take a few minutes. Huh? Hang on a second, hang on a second. Counselor Paulson, what do you need?
I would like to make a motion to direct city staff to get a tentative appraisal on the property located at
410?
410 Fifth Street South,
Okay, Counselor
potential action.
Johnson is not here, so I'd like for him to vote on it as well. Can we hold that until the break, then Counselor Johnson will be back? Thank you, Counselor Paulson. Okay, let's take a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll bring Jody up after the motion. Thank you. You know, the difference between Okay, we're back. Thanks for your patience, Jody. I'm sorry that it took so long to sit there, but come on up. Yep, come on up. We'll do the motion first, but it'll only take a second. Counselor Paulson is looking to make a motion.
Okay, I've made the motion to direct city staff to, I guess, go out for an appraisal on 410 Fifth Street South.
Moved by Counselor Paulson, supported by Counselor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Johnson.
I apologize, I stepped out. Is that something that's practical? If we can't get inside, how do we get a reasonable appraisal?
I think we just want to know the worth for future action as an option.
Yeah, and Mayor, if I may.
Yes,
So,
please, Brian.
An appraiser can do an appraisal, I mean, it's limited and they would make it as kind of a condition or disclosure within the appraisal, but they can do it by just looking at the outside. It's not as accurate as it may be, but it can be done.
Thank you for that clarification.
I would amend the motion to include both addresses on that parcel. Is it a half street or is it
It's actually 412.
That's the garage apartment, 412.
410 and 412?
Yes.
I would amend the motion for that.
Okay, so 410 and 412 amended the motion, and the second is also amended?
Correct.
Thank you, Counselor Freely. So moved and supported to obtain an appraisal on 410 and 412 Fifth Street South and disseminate that appraisal to the affected parties and the council. Is there any further discussion? Here, Counselor Baraboo.
Just a real quick comment on that. I think an appraisal done under those auspices is ridiculous because we get at the Board of Equalization, we get all these requests to reduce tax or reduce values and stuff. And if they have a accurate appraisal, we usually take affirmative action. If they don't, it's useless. So from the outside, if they come around and do an appraisal on your house as St. Louis County appraisers, they put it at the highest value they possibly can. That's known fact when they come around, because I've asked them that question. We assume that everything is pristine in the house and everything, and so it goes up. And I've had examples on my own house where I've, and other pieces of property that I have, my hunting shack is another example. When they couldn't get in, they came in and they lowered the value by a tremendous amount. And with the damage that's inside the house, I don't think an appraisal is worth doing right now, to spend the money on it. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Well, the motion is to conduct an appraisal. Who conducts that appraisal will be up to staff to determine. So it's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for your patience.
Jody's items, item number 8, review the library policy updates.
Good morning, everyone. So staff have been working on policies actually probably since I started. We've run them by the commission, they have approved. There are a couple highlights that you do need to know. One, we have never had a request for reconsideration form, and that is if somebody has an issue with a book we've purchased for whatever reason, so they have to go through a process. Two, we would like to be fine-free, not responsibility-free, which we did during COVID, so everything did come back. With that being said, we do use Unique Management, and they have increased their prices. So the third thing that is a big change is charging $13 when we do have to send them to the collections agency. So those are the highlights. Everything else has just been kind of cleaned up, similar language. This is something that we need to do regularly anyway because it is required by the Arrowhead Library System, and we are in the process of doing our new webpage, so we would like to get our policies up to date and ready to go when the website is ready to go in the next, hopefully, couple months.
Okay, thank you, Jody. I know it was a long, arduous process going through all those policies, but I not painstakingly, but for lack of a term, read through that over the weekend, and so it's amazing how many policies you have. I wasn't aware, but I think the changes are well-founded and highly recommended. Thank you for that. Councilor Beyondich.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Beyondich to approve. Is there support? Support by Councilor Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. All that waiting,
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
but thank
There
you.
will be more, but don't worry, it'll be another year before we get there.
Looking forward to it.
Hey, Jody. Appreciate all the work on those two. And back up to item number 4, review the revisions to city personnel policies entitled Section 8, Drug and Alcohol Testing and Drug-Free Workplace Act Policy for Non-Commercial Drivers. And this is specifically for the employees who are not part of the DOT program.
Yeah, thank you. I read through that policy over the weekend, and it's pretty generic and substandard with other agencies throughout, and this is your recommendation moving forward, Britt?
This is actually from the League of Minnesota Cities with the recent change to the state statute regarding THC. They suggested we take out the word controlled substance and just change it to the word drug. And then reiterate that certain employees, such as law enforcement and those that are regulated by the Public Safety Act, still have to follow those acts and not just our policy.
Very good, thank you. Looking for questions, concerns, comments, or motion from the council.
Do we need to approve the revisions? I would make a motion to approve the revisions for the city personnel policies for drug and alcohol testing.
Moved by Counselor Freelieb, is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries, thank you.
Thank you. Item number 5 is approve the request from Gethsemane Lutheran Church and Peace United Methodist Church to block off 3rd Street South between 9th and 10th Avenue, between the two churches for an event they are having.
And they did send this letter earlier that we could have taken action before at the council meeting. It was in my mailbox between two documents that I didn't see it. I didn't get it to Pam in time, so I apologize for that. Counselor Beyondich.
So moved.
Move to approve by Counselor Beyondich. Is there support? Support by Counselor Freelieb. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Johnson.
Just to make sure that the motion includes directing city staff to assist as needed to get those barricades and stuff.
I'm sorry.
Microphone on.
I'm sorry, to direct city staff to assist with getting the barricades put up and taken down in a timely manner.
Thank you, Counselor Johnson. So it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
Jumping down now to item number 9, review the proposed ordinance, Chapter 10, Section 10.38, moratorium on the sale of hemp-derived THC, food and beverages in the city of Virginia, Minnesota.
Could we go to building and grounds?
I jumped
Could
over
we-
to number
could we
6,
do
sorry.
that one?
Yeah, I'm trying to move us along faster than we are.
Yeah, I hear you.
Sorry about that. I'm sorry. Item number 6, review the lease agreement with American Legion for the adjacent vacant lots known as lots 21 and 22, Block 18.
Yeah, I want to thank the council for moving forward with this request for the veterans to have this lease agreement. And thank you, Brian, for putting it together and getting it to us as quickly as possible. Looking through the lease agreement, looking for comments and action from the council. Councilor Johnson.
My only question was I don't know the right wording, but how are we going to make sure that people aren't driving over the sidewalk onto Chestnut Street? Like, can we put a couple of concrete of those barriers or something that make it inaccessible for vehicles to come across? And I know it's been that way for a long time, but now that we're formalizing a lease, I want to help reduce the risk to us and to them for that. Is that something the city could do as part of a safety?
It's not very aesthetically pleasing, but yes, we can.
Well, or maybe there's some.
I think they have a plan to build a patio out there, which will eliminate people from driving.
I just want to make sure there's some safety consideration given for the parking. Thank you.
Thank you. So it has been moved and supported. Has it been? Looking for additional comments, motions, or costs and concerns. Councilor Paulson.
I'll move to approve the license.
Thank you. Councilor Paulson moves to approve the lease license agreement between the City of Virginia and the American Legion Post 239. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Councilor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Get back to item number 9. Review the proposed ordinance, Chapter 10, Section 10.38, moratorium on the sale of hemp-derived THC, food and beverages in the city of Virginia.
It's a very short ordinance. I read through it. There's an addition, but it does the job, and I'm supportive of it. Council? Counselor Paulson?
I'll move to approve the ordinance.
Counselor Paulson moves to approve the ordinance. Is there support?
I'll support, Mayor.
Thank you. Supported by Counselor Bearable. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Johnson?
Thank you. That like absolutely none, because there's some very small quantity things here and there. Like, is this an absolute nothing that is labeled with the THC? Like, I want to understand how minute. And then my other question is, how are we enforcing this?
It's related to the sale, right? So we don't allow anybody to, the North says we don't allow any sale in the city limits of Virginia. But please, Brian, could you answer Councilor Johnson's question?
Thank you, Mayor, and that is correct. So this would reach all THC-based products that were authorized or made legal under the new legislation in Minnesota. And it is a restriction on the sale. So we can't, as a city, restrict the possession of those items that are legal within the state, but we can ask our retailers within the city not to sell them, which is what this does. And so basically, if we believe that there's a violation, we could send somebody out, and there is actually a criminal or an administrative charge for violation of this section.
Like we did with the synthetics.
Correct.
Thank you.
This is only for 1 year, correct? Or shorter, should we get there? Okay, this is one of those things that if you tell on your neighbor, that Councilor Freeliep's concerns about a lot of other things, we're not, will the city be actively seeking out, will there be stings and that kind of thing, or those undercover? Is that part of what we're looking at here, or is this just to cover ourselves for the year for sales?
Well, I think if there's reports that they're violating the ordinance, we would send, and there's a criminal element to it, we would send the police out there, the enforcement entity to issue cease and desist, right? Brian?
Mayor, may I add a little bit to that?
Please.
From my perspective, the highest value that this has is it gives the city an opportunity to evaluate how we want to regulate. And when we put those new regulations into place, this piece of legislation takes away the ability for any retailer to say, well, I was counting on the fact or relying on the fact that I would be able to make these sales, so I've invested X number of dollars. It takes away that reasonable reliance, and it puts everybody on notice that you shouldn't be doing this and you can't rely on being able to do it in the future. You should wait and see what future regulation looks like, as opposed to, I mean, I trust that there's been people who are watching legislation go through, and you have those opportunistic investors who will have a stockpile ready to sell in the back room before the laws become effective. This will take away the ability for people to say, well, I have some vested right because I relied on something. They're on notice now that they shouldn't be doing it and can't rely on those things.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Paulson?
Just one clarification. Do we need to go through 2 readings of any ordinance? So this isn't technically the first reading, we're just moving it forward to the council. Okay, thank you.
Correct. Yeah, the motion, thank you, Councilor Paulson, for the clarification. So we'll move it to the council. Once it's approved, it gets posted for 10 days, 15 days. After two readings, 15 days, and then it goes to effect. So thank you. So I'm sure there's plenty of opportunity for other people to come forward at the council meeting or during the next committee home meeting or for the second reading moving forward before we make a decision. So it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
The next item is to set a budget meeting for Tuesday, August 30th.
Okay, we have a time? Pardon?
Whenever you would like.
Okay, thank you. So Tuesday is, of course, an off Tuesday. So looking for, first, if anybody has concerns or a conflict for Tuesday, August 30th, and if not, what time would be amenable to all of you? You'll be ready to present anytime after 8 AM, correct? All right, very good. Counselor Beyondich. Okay, so you're thinking, so we're looking for a motion to set the time and the date.
I would move 8:30 to allow for.
Okay,
some of us
Counselor Johnson moves to
On the
approve,
30th.
to approve
In case it snows.
the budget meeting for 8:30 AM, Tuesday, August 30th. Is there support? Support by Counselor Bearable. Is there any further discussion? Any conflicts anybody have on Tuesday, the 30th at 8:30? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries.
Final item that's listed on the agenda is item number 11, discuss property offer for parcel and public safety development area located at 112 9th Street South. And this portion of the meeting may be closed per state statute 13D05, subdivision 3, C3.
Thank you. John, would you request that this be a closed meeting?
No, I would not.
Okay, thank you. All right, very good, thank you. Then we have a resolution. No, it's different. Okay, look. One moment, what was that? We'll do that after. Okay, yeah, thank you. Looking for council action regarding the parcel. John, could you give us a little information about this parcel?
Yes, this parcel, there was an appraisal, and a review appraisal. They both came in at the same number. The purchase agreement is based on that appraisal and review appraisal. It's been accepted by the seller, and I need approval, recommendation by the council to move this forward, and I do recommend approval.
Thank you, John.
Also move that request to move this forward for sale, 112 9th Street South.
Move to approve by Councilor Bearable. Is there support? Support by Councilor Barnzelli. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. How many more we got left? One down and two to go? As far as parcels go, John?
I believe the latest map was disseminated.
It was.
Brian shaking his head, yes. I updated the map as of August 8th. Was that disseminated?
I was remiss, I guess, so I'll look it up. Thank you, John, appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay. We have another item?
On your desk is the VITA resolution setting a public hearing for the VITA levy.
Okay, looks like we have a resolution for us requesting the approval to present intent to levy a tax for economic development authority purposes pursuant to Minnesota statute section 469-107 and calling for a public hearing therein. And you have the resolution before you? Yes, set for September the 13th. At what time? 5 p.m. It's September the 13th, so we'll be setting this date, if approved by the council, for this hearing on September 13th at 5 p.m. Councilor Johnson.
The resolution will need to be corrected. It says September 6th.
Yes, I see that. It says September the 6th.
I will move the meeting for September 13th at 5 p.m.
Okay, Councilor Johnson moves to approve the resolution pending the correction from September 6th to December 13th to hold, September 13th to hold a public hearing. Is there support? Is there support? Support by Councilor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just to move it forward, not to say we're approving, or are we moving the approval forward? Because otherwise I have to abstain.
We'll approve it at the council meeting on Tuesday.
So can I vote to move this forward, or would you rather have me abstain in case the following year that I need to apply for any funding from VITA?
I think, Mayor, if I may.
Please, Brian.
Best practice is if you would abstain at the vote at the council meeting, you may want to abstain here.
Okay.
especially given, unless the vote is close.
Okay, I will abstain, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Abstain.
Aye. Abstention by one. Counselor Paulson abstains. Motion passes 6 to, with one abstention. Okay, thank you. Anything else?
I do have one other item. We do
Okay.
have the mediation set with AFSMI, so I need to know who is going to participate in the mediation.
Okay, thank you. My sense is, and I look for the council for recommendations, that because this is a personal matter, I would like to see at least one personnel person to sit in on that mediation, and maybe one freelance, one other counselor, or whatever you deem like to see, but somebody from personnel maybe, or not, doesn't matter, it could be, but I would like to see two counselors sit in with staff with respect to this, if you are willing to serve.
I would be willing to.
Okay, so we have one person from the Personnel Committee that's willing, and that
What's the
is
date, Brett?
Counselor Freelieb
September 13th at 9 a.m.
and Counselor Beyondich.
I was just going to ask when it is. Let me check to see what I have.
Okay, thank you. The date, once again, Britt.
September 13th at 9 a.m. This may go all day.
Mayor? On the notice from the BMS, it does say that this should not be a public meeting.
No, it'll be private, yes,
Not a
correct.
public
It'll be
meeting.
closed, but that's why I only asked for two counselors to be present, at least one from the Personnel Committee, so there's not a quorum, and another counselor if possible. Okay, so we're looking for a couple two people to serve. Counselor Freely was willing. Does anyone else have the time to do so? Please, would you let Pam know? And then we'll have at least two counselors on there along with staff, and it'll be a closed meeting with no quorum of the council present, so. That makes sense? Okay, so we don't need a motion. You've already set the hearing date for 9 a.m. on September the 13th, correct? Very good, thank you.
We can just solidify at the council meeting who's going to be part of the
Yeah, we'll
negotiating team.
figure that out by the council meeting, we'll know.
And then speaking of negotiating, LELS has indicated that they are now ready to negotiate with us. We'll need to set a negotiating team for LELS contract as well.
So we'll decide that later.
Sooner than later would be better because we do want to talk with them about retention and
Well, I was thinking
Action
like
policy?
December 1st or something like that. No, I'm
Thinking
only
earlier.
joking. So yeah, we could do that, put that together.
get that in the back of your mind if anybody wants to sit on that LELS.
Okay, well, let's talk about that, and maybe you can make a decision at the next council meeting who's willing to serve in that negotiation process. Sure, okay. Well, we'll get a couple of counselors available right now, and then we can move to get the rest of them together for the negotiating team. So Counselor Johnson has volunteered to serve in the negotiating team for LELS, along with our city administrator and our human resources director. Do we need just, I think, my sense is we just, and Brian as well, of course, two counselors, would that suffice? Okay, Counselor Johnson, and maybe we get another volunteer to serve on the negotiating committee for the LALS contract as well.
Yeah, 2 would be great because if we go to 3, then it might be a potential quorum. So we'd like to be 2
Yeah, I would
or
think 2, thank you, Britt, 2. So we have one volunteer for the one and one volunteer for the other. So if you please let Pam know if you're interested, or Britt, and then we'll get the second person on each one of those. So thank you for serving, Counselor Freely and Counselor Johnson. So, okay, anything else, Britt? Brian, anything else? Okay, Pam? Sherry? John? Okay, Council?
I do have one other thing, I'm sorry, I apologize. It's really fairly fast. Our building at 118 Chestnut that's owned by Vita, we have executed a notice to vacate order. We will be getting it out to him shortly. He has fallen behind on his lease. He's indicated to John that he is ready to vacate the building. We'll be getting it back. Vita will talk about their next meeting, what they want for a lease price or a purchase price. So just want to give you a heads up on that one.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And see, I've got 4 or 5 items here too. The first item is, does anybody have anything else they want to talk to before we adjourn? Seeing none, we stand adjourned at noon. Thank you very much. Okay.